Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Kick me out of S.H.I.E.L.D. I destroyed everyone in the Avengers. Chapter 81. Pain. It hurts so much. Max only felt that he had fallen into hell and suffered endless pain, and just when he felt that he had reached his limit, the powerful survival instinct drove him to struggle and crawl out of hell. And the evil ghost came to the world. Zzz. The figure swayed with silver blue electric arc light. He gradually rose out of the water and floated in midair. With just a casual wave of his hand, several electric currents spread out and penetrated the electrical box. Along with the water pouring down, there were also lively and vigorous ones. S.H.I.E.L.D. What's wrong with me? Max felt the violent power in his body and felt as if he had the power to control everything. But he wasn't happy about having this power. Instead, I felt an inexplicable panic. He turned into a monster. Has he become less of a human being? No. Max held his head in pain, and as he became increasingly excited, the terrifying electric power spread out, shattering the countless glass pools, causing disaster to the eels watching the show. Bang, bang. The water is mixed with eels falling from the sky. And the man was sobbing in pain. Until this place became a mess. Max just reacted. Crash. But there was a sound of a key turning the door lock outside the door. Oops. Max is like a thief about to meet his master. He didn't have time to think about anything before he hit the window above his head. God knows, there is actually a skylight built in this power supply room on the third underground floor. And this also became an escape route. But after the security guard pushed the door open, he was shocked. He saw the water on the ground, he saw countless dead eels, and he also saw a vague figure flashing through the arc of electricity. Is this a ghost? Clang. Inside the S.H.I.E.L.D. Director Nick is furious. At this time, he already knew that Hankmer Industries had also developed armor technology. Is that an Iron Overlord that's more than 5 meters tall? What's even more chilling, this powerful Iron Overlord defeated the War Machine developed by Iron Man. In this case, Tony's armor technology is no longer a rare commodity. Unless Tony can honestly defeat the Iron Overlord in a head-on fight. Otherwise, will Tony become a joke? And his investment income from S.H.I.E.L.D. will also shrink significantly. After all, Director Nick wants a unique superhero. The thought of this braised egghead makes me feel a dull pain in my heart. Worst deal he ever made. Just give up the butcher liaison. Instead, he accepted Iron Man Tony. What if he didn't do such a wrong thing? So the powerful liaison is still working in S.H.I.E.L.D. How great would that be? Director Nick wants to crush it with his steel teeth. Dong dong dong. Captain Steve pushed open the door at this moment. He looked worried and said straight to the point. Director Nick, the online comments about Tony are becoming more and more unkind. If we don't do something, he will become a bad guy. Fall in ruins. Perform something. What should we do? Director Nick pushed back angrily. You must know that Tony has not been seen working since he drank all day long. We should think of something. We are true partners. Captain Steve's face exudes the light of the right way, like a guiding light in the darkness. When Director Nick saw this scene, he felt like he had a lump in his throat and wanted to wipe their butts himself. Is this S.H.I.E.L.D. leader a cleaning lady? He forced a smile and said, if you want to help Tony, I have approved your mission. You go and inspire his fighting spirit. After Captain Steve heard this, he was a little stunned. He originally wanted Director Nick to solve this problem, but after a round of twists and turns, it ended up on him. Isn't this good? What's wrong? You and Tony are also brothers and sisters. When he is in trouble, we should help him. How can we get out of the way? Comrade Steve, your awareness still needs to be improved. Quote. Oh well. After Director Nick's confession, Captain Steve walked towards the door worriedly. Nick, who witnessed all this happening, had a mocking look on his face. You want a good reputation. Why don't you strive for it yourself? But at this moment, there was a news item on the TV in front of him. According to the self-healing drug developed by Milcom Industrial Group, we will enter an era without disease. The acquaintance, Butcher, appeared in front of the camera. He was wearing a crisp suit. And as he commanded, the lizard doctor appeared under the camera. He introduced, the first generation of self-healing medicine developed by Milcom Industrial Group is about to be released. Any external damage will be healed by this medicine. No matter you are disabled or congenital incomplete. The female reporter April also had a smile as bright as a flower. She peeked at the tall man next to her from time to time, her eyes full of enthusiasm. Not to mention the audience in the audience. Are they already immersed in a world without disease? Is it conceivable what an impact this will have on traditional medical care? However, Director Nick felt that his vision went dark and he almost couldn't breathe. The gap is too big. With this pearl in front of me. His dissatisfaction with Iron Man Tony has become more and more intense. That is, he is a spoiled child, he is an arrogant man, and he is not worth the efforts of S.H.I.E.L.D. Tony, you are the worst deal I have ever dealt with. Not one of them. ... Clatter, clatter. In the corner of Times Square, there was a homeless man huddled in the corner. He wrapped himself tightly in his coat, leaving only a pair of eyes staring at the outside world warily. If someone came close, he would tighten his clothes and bury his head in his chest. Max is thinking about life at the moment. He felt endless emptiness and violence. He is still unable to control the powerful electric power in his body. He feels like he will destroy everything around him if he is not careful. This forced him to use all his strength to fight against this wild restlessness. Hey, you guy, get out of here. The scolding sound suddenly sounded. Who? Max raised his head warily. But he saw a fat middle-aged woman with a face full of disgust, and beside her was a bloated strong man holding a camera and wanting to take pictures. So, you are blocking their group photo. This cowardly man stood up obediently. But before he takes a few steps away, the couple urged him again and said a few lines about Maja fake. Apparently they disliked him for walking too slowly. This is such an act of being ignored and looked down upon. Max has felt it too many times, but now, he looked down at his fingers lingering with lightning, and said, I don't want this anymore. How dare you talk back? The plump middle-aged woman couldn't wait to rush forward, grabbed Max's hair, and slapped him hard. 1 time, 2 times, bang, but after a burst of roaring sound, the middle-aged woman was knocked out, her whole body was blackened, and she fell to the ground twitching continuously. How dare you fight back, mutant? The equally obese man screamed, but he did not focus on his wife who fell to the ground. Instead, he stared at that disgusting species. Also under his watch, lightning burst out. Bang. He was also knocked away. My eyes become clearer. Max just felt comfortable all over. But the onlookers around them avoided it like the god of plague. This terrifying current mutant actually dares to harm ordinary people. Get out of New York City, you filthy fool. God, why do you want us to see all this filth? I was actually slandered as a fool. Max gritted his teeth, his face turned pale, and something seemed to have been penetrated in his heart. Does he feel like he did nothing wrong? Is it just tit for tat? Why are there always some fools who think too highly of themselves and want to cause trouble? Does it have to be moral kidnapping? Zitza. The current in Max's body is becoming more and more unstable, like a powder keg that's about to explode. But even in this current state, Max still didn't want to fight, but said, Gentlemen and ladies, if you don't want to get into trouble, just go away. I'm not in good condition. If I'm accidentally injured, not good. But those excited people reprimanded loudly and refused to succumb to the darkness. The even more excited ones raised their firearms. Are they always like this? They are always so ignorant and infuriating. Max fell into an ice cave. He felt his uncontrollable electric power spreading. Boom. In an instant, this powerful current swept through the entire venue. The people who swore democracy and peace were stunned. The world fell silent. Bang. But in the villa by the sea, there were quarrels and curses at this moment. It was accompanied by a heavy slap in the face. Tony, you have let down all the companions who trusted you. Captain Steve yelled loudly, but what was lying in front of him was a puddle of mud. Not only did he stink, but he also had a slovenly beard and a muddled appearance. Wine. I want wine. The man stretched out his hand to fumble, with drunkenness still on his face. But you must know that this is the once high-spirited billionaire and superhero Tony. But what now? He seems like an alcoholic. Even Captain Steve's beatings and scoldings didn't awaken his fighting spirit. All that remained was a deep sigh. Captain Steve glanced at the message sent on his phone, and then warned. It's late, I should go. Tony, my companion, you were once the most powerful Avenger. No matter what, I hope you cheer up. Bang. When the door is closed, the tranquility of the past was restored in this dim laboratory. Only the semi-mechanical symbiote that still retains vitality in the glass cover is squirming like a beast waiting to break out of its trap. Wait, it's not too late, Zila. But outside the door of the villa, just when the man in the battle uniform with the flag looked up to the sky, a battleship came into view, followed by Eagle Eye's call, "Captain, we have a new mission." "What's it about?" Captain Steve asked. "Is it lightning and storm?" According to the mission record, this is a tragedy that happened in Times Square. This has something to do with the power of mutants. The criminal is blocked on the field. We rush there now to solve the problem. It looks like we are busy again. After Captain Steve sat on the chair, he took over the information handed over by the Black Widow Natasha Romanoff, and on the first page of the document was clearly recorded various information about the electrician genius Max. As for the last sentence of the document, it is disclosed. This is an ordinary person who is harmless to humans and animals. Before he obtained super ability, he was ignored by too many people. As for now, what he wants to do is get everyone's praise and expectations. Is he a wretch covered in hypocrisy? Captain Steve always felt like he was being connoted a little bit. And inside that quaint villa, as Liaison gradually mastered the power of the god, did he gradually realize the gap between mortals and immortals? Is this like the difference between two-dimensional creatures and three-dimensional creatures? Is this kind of improvement in life level immeasurable? If we have to use some quantitative vocabulary to divide, that is, within a small area, all the people in the enemy country will be wiped out. Crash. Like the sun radiating light and heat, the scorching hot air waves almost cracked the ground. The originally green vegetation also turned yellow in an instant. And this is just an image caused by the surge of chi and blood in this man who is like a god and a demon. What if he truly unleashed his power? One can imagine the terrifying power it will cause. Lord Liaison. The shouts came. Beside the door, there is a half-kneeling teenage mutant ninja turtle wrapped in a blue bandage. The two long knives placed next to him still had traces of blood on them, obviously they had gone through a fight. As the boss of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Leo's strength is really not weak. He has learned his own unique double blade skills. In addition, after being taught by an adult recently, he has been training sleeplessly and has become Liaison's subordinate. The sharpest knife. I have carried out the search according to your instructions. Not long ago, I found the target you were looking for. Luke. Luke is a man with noble pursuits. Leo sighed and then the words came out of his mouth. Although this is a word of praise. But you can tell from his weird expression. This is not a good thing. Really. Leo's subsequent words confirmed Liaison's thoughts. He actually works 2 jobs a day. He is simply so self-disciplined. I just found him at a place called Dad's Barber Shop. What a hell. This man with skin as hard as diamond is scrubbing the customer's head very docilely. He doesn't look like a superhero at all. At the beginning, Leo thought this guy had some special quirks. But later, Leo discovered that this guy was simply short of money. He worked as a cleaner during the day, and at night he went to work as a dishwasher in the nightclub run by the water belly snake, Connor. So, you followed him for a week? Liaison asked. Leo nodded affirmatively and replied, "At the beginning, I didn't find a good reason to get close, but one day later, the war between the water belly snake gang affected this barber shop. The innocent customer was shot in the head. The dad, as the store manager, also had his arm broken, while his son was protected by Luke." Quote, "Have you chosen to join the battle?" "Of course I joined. Luke is very vigilant. After I helped him intercept a gang associate, I naturally followed him to destroy the stronghold," Leo said while holding the 2 knives in his hands, and said with unfinished meaning, "It's a pity that there are too few scum, and they are not enough for me to chop." After hearing this, Liaison's eyes flashed with understanding. Is the fate of these so-called heroes really the same? As long as it is glowing gold, even if it is thrown into the pit, someone will pick it up. Isn't this? He killed a few barber customers. Next, this Luke will encounter big trouble. At that time, it is time for me to collect all the Hell's Kitchen F4. This is Luke Cage after all. But what about a man who has a soft tongue and a hard body all over? He has been active in Hell's Kitchen all year round and has strong resistance to beatings. He also joined the Defenders group and became a warrior to protect justice. Coupled with his stubborn personality, he is a comrade who can be won over. Lee Zahn arranged for Leo to go and fight for it. He already has the support of Iron Fist and Daredevil. What if Luke and Jessica are not recruited? Isn't one missing? Plus this tough-skinned man, although limited by the weak internal organs of humans, but it can still resist the so-called missile fire. It's completely possible to hide thunder in your crotch. It won't look like someone is building a fortress. Lee Zahn was thinking about it when he heard a system prompt next to his ear. Ding! Congratulations to the host for triggering the random mission. Close black lens bracket. There are two sides to this. Times Square is pretty miserable. It was originally a place full of laughter and laughter. At this moment, there is a dark cloud hanging over it. Dust mixed with embers covers the earth. Cries, screams, curses were heard constantly. Please, please help us. This is what that mutant did. We're going to kill him. God, is there someone who wants to exterminate the human race? That mutant. And even in this chaotic scene, someone still didn't forget to make a phone call to the police station. Clang. In the New York City Police Department, as the news of the unexpected explosion was conveyed, the comrades who were still reading the newspapers and preparing to drink tea at 3:30 were so anxious that they could no longer hold the teacups in their hands. My seventh great uncle, who on earth has the courage to commit an explosion in a financial center? Could it be that he is a lunatic? These low-level police officers already feel troubled. Not to mention being the backbone of the police department. Director George was even more angry and had an expression on his face. He had just calmed down from the incident of saving his daughter. He didn't expect to encounter such a terrible thing. Can't we let him rest for a few days? He just knew New York City was fooled up. From time to time, some inhuman events will happen. Director, do we need to dispatch the police quickly? Officer Misty, who was standing aside, was a little eager to try. It can be seen from her impatient expression. This guy likes to challenge other people's hard nut to crack. Go, why don't you go? Director George took a deep breath, and then adjusted his mentality. After he completed the deployment, he led 2 teams of personnel and rushed to the center of the accident. Serves as a protective umbrella for New York City. They send out the police to this day. It all depends on serving the country and the people. Life is hard. Can be the initiator of this current explosion case. Max fell into unspeakable pain. Originally he was just an electrician for Osborne Company. He has never been exposed to extraordinary power. Even if the power is released due to a moment of anger. It also came quickly. It goes quickly. When he saw the tragic scene before his eyes, the scorched earth, and the wailing people on the earth. A strong feeling of guilt swept through his heart. Bang, bang, bang. Max couldn't help but bang his head. Grabbing the ground with your head. What on earth did I do? How can I damage other people's names at will? I'm guilty. The man was nearly on his knees. It was also at this time. Clang. The crisp sound of objects hitting each other sounded. Max raised his head. Then what came into view was a round shield with the 5 stars group case printed on it. This is. Before Max could come back to his senses, he saw the man wearing a familiar uniform gradually approaching. He looked so majestic and bright that even with a mask on, he could see the justice from the corner of his mouth. Smile. But the words that came out of his mouth were as cold as ice. Mutant fool, hold your head in your hands and kneel down. Don't think about making unnecessary resistance. Based on the casualties you have caused now, we have reason to kill you on the spot. Is this Captain America? Max's pupils, which had lost their luster, lit up again. Does he know the great achievements of the man in front of him? In those war-torn times, Captain Steve's heroic deeds inspired generations of soldiers. Even 70 years later in 2000, this man is still a hot topic sought after by the people. So what if he has some dirty information recently? According to Max, this is also all false. Are you really Captain Steve? Max stood up happily. He couldn't wait to take 2 steps forward. He wanted to get closer to his idol. If it were a different place, it must be a famous scene of hardcore fans chasing celebrities. But this is a battlefield. Zila. A knife flew from the air. It went straight through his lower abdomen. This is. Before Max could look down at the wound, he saw a man walking out from behind Captain America, carrying katana on his back. Although the makeup and dressing have changed. But Electro, he still saw at a glance that it was marksman Hawkeye from the Avengers. But why is he no longer carrying a bow and arrow? Stop your scrutinizing eyes, and don't even think about fooling us. Hawkeye said with full vigilance. Since the last time he suffered revenge from Daredevil, his accuracy in drawing a bow and shooting arrows has been far worse than before. But fortunately, he changed his strategy in time and used the knife-throwing technique. It's not like you've hit rock bottom. Why can't you get up even if you're afraid of climbing? But there was always a fire in his heart. He is the most powerful marksman among humans. Why go through the humiliation of a masked blind man? Eagle Eyes examined the electro-optical man in front of him, with an expression of envy in his eyes. Why do you have the power to control electricity, and I have been practicing hard for so long and I am just a mortal. Marksman's eyes turned red with jealousy. What nonsense are you talking to him about? The female agent in graceful black clothes walked over slowly. She looked at the electric man in front of her and said in a casual tone, "Are you waiting for us to take action? Or are you surrendering yourself?" As a top agent trained by the Red House training camp, Black Widow has good self-made ability. Unless you're facing a supervillain. Will you indulge yourself? Me, I'm a fool. After hearing the unmodified words of these superheroes in front of him, Max felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave. This was far from what he usually guessed, right? He thinks these superheroes should be like the knights in the Bible. Possessing admirable noble character, rather than such a price drop. He hesitated, not realizing that there was no pain from the wound of the flying knife that pierced his flesh. Beside the corner of the ruins, a fat woman climbed up. A piece of skin had been broken next to her nose, and blood was oozing out, making her look disgusting. However, when she glanced at the Avengers team beside her, finally, as if he saw a spark of hope, he ran from 3 steps to 2 steps and began to cry. "Captain Steve, you have to save us. I don't know what's wrong with this mutant freak, but he actually attacked Times Square. I really suffered an unthinkable disaster." As she spoke, she showed off her wounds. So openly and openly confusing right and wrong. You know, just before this. But she slapped Max twice and forced him to be humiliated. "Don't worry, girl, we won't let anyone go when it comes to criminal supervillains." Captain Steve spoke with high-sounding words, but his response was flawless. What if it was recorded? Will he definitely be selected as one of the 10 outstanding figures who inspired the United States? When Black Widow and Hawkeye saw this, their eyes rolled around a few times, and they also greeted him enthusiastically. With their talk and comfort. Have you already characterized Max in front of you as a heinous fool? As for whether the woman in front of me is exaggerating, it doesn't matter. What I care about is whether this battle is won beautifully. Captain Steve held up the 5-star buckler, his eyes showing unshakable faith. The next second, "Avengers assemble." Familiar slogans sounded. The figure flashed by. Only Captain Steve, Hawkeye, and Black Widow were seen. The 3 of them picked up their weapons and rushed towards the Electro in front of them. There is no doubt about the result. Clang. After the 5-star shield fell, the electric man was actually thrown 4 to 5 meters away. Immediately afterwards, Black Widow and Hawkeye stepped forward and struck out a series of combos like a broken bamboo. As the most elite agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., relying on their superb skills, the semi-awakened, Electro was capable of playing this fighting skill at the level of an ordinary person. When the fat woman saw this scene, she was also extremely excited. She put her hands on her hips and breathed out. "Stupid mutant fool, people like you shouldn't exist in society. How dare you hurt my face? You have to pay for it, compensate me a lot of money. Otherwise, you will die far away." The woman who was originally the perpetrator. At this moment, he behaves more righteously than justice. Still full of momentum. Is it because she has Captain America by her side? Or are there so-called superheroes? Grass. Am I the innocent one? Listening to the curses from the people around me. During this group fight, the guilt that had arisen in the Electric Man also dissipated, and he couldn't help but use foul language. Why should he have to endure everything? Could it be that because of his kindness, he would repent even if he had the strength? Pissed, accompanied by a sharp sound. Another dagger pierced the Electron's heart. A feeling of weakness arose. Am I going to die? After the Electric Man felt the feeling of his life force gradually dissipating, he couldn't help but feel a strong desire to survive in his heart. No one likes death. When facing a life or death crisis, the instinct to survive will expand infinitely, until it's overwhelming. Crash. On this site that was supposed to be in ruins, a strong wind arose out of thin air. The wind was blowing hard. It's like God is angry. What's going on? Hawkeye and Black Widow scanned the man in front of him, and when he saw the man's unblinking expression, I don't know why, but I felt a sense of fear. Isn't he dead? Aren't we doing a just thing by intercepting super criminals? Why do you feel bad? Do they have doubts on their faces? But Captain Steve, who was standing not far away, screamed first. What the hell is this? Just when he had a look of horror on his face, the fat woman who was scolding vigorously was also stuck in place like a duck stuck in her throat. A lot of lightning appeared around. The silver is shining. Like tassels. Those one after another flew over from all sides of the square. Just like a baby swallow returning to its nest, it landed on Max, who should have been completely cold. Under that terrifying current interweaving, his wide-open pupils began to glow with white light, as if they were activated large power banks. Crash. The next second, the electro-optical man levitated into the air, resurrected with full health, and looked down at him. When he saw the superheroes Hawkeye and Black Widow in front of him, he said angrily, "Superheroes, you all deserve to die. If it breaks, you know this mission is not that simple." Hawkeye's expression became solemn, and then he took out a long knife from his back. Black Widow also squatted on the ground and pulled out 2 daggers from her ankles. Not to mention Captain Steve, who slowly walked up from behind, stood with the 2 companions, pressed the communication button next to his ear and said, "Agent Fitz, it's time to arrange their attack." Quote. What? Black Widow was still a little confused after hearing this, but the scene that followed was far beyond his expectation. I saw 20 agents in black jumpsuits running towards me with guns raised. Their movements were very fast, and in the blink of an eye, they surrounded the electro-optical man in front of them. And it can be seen from the special combat uniforms they wear. Are these similar to Spider-Man's black suit? Shock. Can all the combat uniforms developed by the headquarters be mass-produced? Hawkeye's heart felt like he was hit hard, just when he looked at Captain Steve with a scrutinizing gaze. The latter said in a seemingly relaxed tone, "This is the Venom combat team newly developed by S.H.I.E.L.D. Do you know that it has certain requirements for its users? So, the selection of wearers must follow the standards. You and Natasha Romanoff are not in a good state lately." After Captain Steve said these words, neither Hawkeye nor Black Widow looked good. After all, they have been suffering from their inability to resist extraordinary abilities for a long time. What if those are just supervillains who only rely on their talents to cause chaos? Unexpectedly, you can't even get the latest combat clothes developed by the headquarters. Has the braised egghead changed his mind? Without waiting for them to show a scene like, "You have changed. You have changed." "I have not changed my mind." Crash. The electro-optical man suspended in the air was the first to attack. He waved his arms and released the gaze-like beam of electricity. This energy beam flew in front of these people in the blink of an eye. Boom. Following that burst of terrifying explosions, only Hawkeye and Black Widow were seen lying on the ground in disgrace. Captain Steve performed slightly better. After all, he was wearing a special Venom suit, but the fat woman was in misery. Even if Captain Steve tried his best after protecting her, she was also disturbed by the terrifying current. Crack. The crisp sound of bone breaking sounded. The fat woman's legs were broken in 2 parts. She shook the fat on her face and stared with her big eyes. Why didn't she wantonly insult the electric man in front of her? Under the influence of this severe pain, he closed his eyes and twitched away. How could this fat woman not think of it? With the help of heroic Avengers. How could she be so seriously injured? Isn't this script wrong? How dare this mutant fool hurt anyone in front of us? Captain Steve was furious when he saw this. You must know that since Iron Man Tony became decadent, he has firmly held the position of leader of the team. Even if you are frustrated again and again, that was just a temporary failure. It is our duty to rebuild the glory of S.H.I.E.L.D. Captain Steve held the shield in his hand, and then slowly stood up. When he waved his hand forward, he said in a sonorous tone, "Venom Team Agent, charge me." The words have not yet finished. The black figures flashed past. He actually used his numerical advantage to surround the electro-optical man in front of him. What followed was a confrontation between the two parties. The electro-optic man is suspended in the air and can control current fluctuations, and its power cannot be underestimated. Especially the ground that was already in ruins. Also under the cover of this attack, it became riddled with holes. But those agents wearing venom suits can resist beating. They relied on their flexible mobility and the orange light bullets released by the charged firearms in their hands to fight against the man in the air. So this is also a new technology developed by Fitz. The eagle eye scanned this scene, and his teeth were already itching. You know, he and Black Widow are still using the most primitive cold weapons. Is this weapon still attractive to people? Just when Black Widow also looked at the captain next to her with some anger. The man looked as usual and said calmly, "It's just an experimental product. It's dangerous. Only members of the Venom team can use it. As expected of you." The great and upright Captain Steve. Hawkeye and Black Widow looked at each other. Although they were full of sadness, they could only say softly, "Then Captain, please follow up and improve it. After all, for us, weapons are our second life." "Ah. No problem. We are companions." Captain Steve agreed, and then he waved the shield in his hand and rushed towards the teams fighting in front of him. Oh, the great Captain America is about to create a brilliant record again. Believe it, this will change the day for S.H.I.E.L.D. Crack, crackle, crackle. After a fierce and rhythmic impact sounded, a group of heroic S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. Join hands. The group started beating up the honest man in front of him, Electric Man. Although this electro-optical man can control thunder and lightning, he can even turn part of his flesh and blood into semi-elements. But this does not mean that he can sit firmly on Dalyutai. Are these S.H.I.E.L.D. agents not vegetarians? With their full cooperation, and with the assistance of charged firearms, Max, who had just become a person with extraordinary abilities on his first day, was stunned. The battle situation gradually became tense. At this time, Captain Steve rushed into the battle with lightning speed. He waved the shield in his hand, jumped up high and then slammed it down hard, knocking the electro-optical man to the ground. Immediately afterwards, he used his hands and feet together and used old fists. This punch after punch, not very harmful, but it's extremely insulting. After all, the Electro has seen Captain Steve's arrogant face, and he also helped the fat woman to come forward to deceive and bully him, a good comrade who is a good comrade. Is this a beaver? This is unreasonable. In the past, this should have been soaked in the pig cage. Z-la-la. The shining light of thunder and lightning was released from Max's side. Then he burst out and rushed towards the man in front of him. I have a symbiote armor to protect my body. What can a mere thunder and lightning do to me? Captain Steve fought against it without showing any signs of weakness. Zzzz. The ear-piercing roar continued. But what followed was Captain Steve's no fear attitude, as if he was the nemesis of justice. But the continuous exclamations kept coming from behind. Look quickly. Captain Steve is beating up that evil supervillain. Let me tell you, these mutants deserve to die. Captain did a great job. Don't you see something is wrong with this situation? The Electric Man is showing off his power. The electric current on his body is so powerful. Captain Steve actually resisted. How amazing is that? No, this is not right. Captain Steve's hair is burnt. Captain Steve's hair is falling out. It's so bright. No, this is American baldness. Fake squid. After Captain Steve heard these originally flattering words, he was happy at first, but then his head went cold and he felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave. He stretched out his hand and wiped it, and it was really as the melon eater said. The mask he was wearing was damaged, and all the hair that should have been golden hair fell off. He is the heroic Captain America, right? Why endure this humiliation? Captain Steve was so angry that he waved the shield in his hand and struck hard at the enemy in front of him. But at this moment, the electro-optical man who was beaten no longer looked like he was being slaughtered. Instead, it's like a sharp knife coming out of its sheath. Have you been fighting for too long? Captain Steve, it's my turn now. The words were not spoken yet. Then he saw that the electric man's body erupted with more intense light, and he knocked Captain Steve away hard. Then the electro-optical man hammered the ground with both hands, and what followed was a range of attacks that converged into a beam of light and spread out, sweeping across the members of the Venom team and the leader, Captain Steve, in an instant. Captain Steve's teeth were so sore that they were almost broken. But under this strong current injury, it can only be endured passively. That's right. The ability of this electro-optical man can be transformed into electricity, and it can also control the electricity of the entire city. Even if it is not fully developed, it can still unleash moves that ordinary people cannot bear. Bang 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 bang. Those loyal members of the Venom team were thrown to pieces, and then stood up again. Are they like tireless machines? The leader, the bald Captain Steve, also stood up. He skillfully organized the agents around him to attack the electro-optical man in front of him again. He had been through too many of these incidents. He was beaten up by Spider-Man Peter. He was violently beaten by a ninja god. He was beaten up by Daredevil. Can he play all day? Now is the time to rebuild S.H.I.E.L.D's honor. Captain Steve gritted his teeth and looked resolute. If you didn't look at his bald forehead, did he really look like a righteous leader? But now, instead he became a complete comic. Even the captain who is known as the public's lover, without his hair. It's like a wild boar that has lost its hair. But the electro-optical man suspended in the air gradually took control of this body. With the help of these super agents, his fighter skills surged. Not everyone can be stabbed in the heart and still survive. Only infinitely closer to death. Only then will the amazing potential be unleashed. I, Max, want to teach you a group of righteous superheroes a lesson. He said through gritted teeth, and then controlled the electric current to wash the floor in Times Square. Continuous lightning attacks fell like raindrops. The Captain Steve and his team were beaten until they ran away with their heads in their hands. So what if they regroup? On this battlefield, victory cannot be achieved by just relying on justice and talking. Strength. Only strong strength can feel everything. Just then, the bald Captain Steve barely rolled his head under a concrete slab, pressed the communication earpiece and shouted. Agent Fitz, I need to seek support. Isn't a whole Venom team enough to solve the battle? A questioning voice came from the other end of the phone. Captain Steve almost cursed. That fool mutant can control thunder and lightning, almost as much as a careerist who controls magnetism. How do we fight? Even if we have the Venom suit, we can only barely resist. ... Director Nick, what should we do in this situation? Inside S.H.I.E.L.D., as Agent Fitz asked for instructions, the one-eyed director shook his chair and did not speak for a long time. His eyes were red with anger. The Avengers can't even take down this one supervillain. Can we really protect the Earth? You also need the support of Iron Man Tony. But he is completely decadent and cannot be relied on for a while. Unless... Director Nick turned to look at Fitz and said in his usual calm tone, how is the Spider-Man clone you are working on? We have achieved certain results and can even be put into use. Agent Fitz replied in the affirmative. He knew what the braised egghead in front of him was thinking. When Captain Steve is unreliable, he can only rely on others. But on whom? It just so happens that some time ago, the gene extracted from Spider-Man and the cloned generation of biological creatures became the key to turning defeat into victory. Although cloning technology is difficult, right? But the symbiote was a perfect match for Peter's blood and cells. When Agent Fitz put Peter's blood and part of the symbiote into the culture vessel, it has even reached the point where it changes every day. From the initial embryonic state to the final adult state. It only took a week. Can you believe this? Is this too fast? Not just fast. This replica version of Venom Spider-Man is also very powerful. Agent Fitz also conducted a series of data collection and analysis and concluded that he can deadlift more than 10 tons with one hand, which is comparable to 10 Captain Steves. Captain Steve, I didn't offend all of you. Agent Fitz, are you sure you can really send him to the battlefield? Director Nick responded with suspicion. It can be seen from his micro-expression at this moment. This man has a huge demand for powerful and reliable agents. But for an old guy like him who has survived World War II to this day, the sense of security is missing again. Even the agents who are closest to him are only the second echelon of his trust. He only believes in himself. If he can copy the super ability to himself, Director Luden might become a native of the motherland on the spot. But unfortunately, it doesn't work. We have carried out ideological education and management. The clone is extremely loyal to S.H.I.E.L.D. There is no possibility of defecting. Agent Fitz replied affirmatively. It's best not to make mistakes, otherwise you will know the consequences. Director Nick squinted his eyes and looked at Agent Fitz next to him with a scrutinizing gaze. The latter, like a quail, lowered his head tremblingly and whispered back, I don't do anything I'm not sure about. Then arrange for him to join the battle. Director Nick nodded, and then turned his attention to the big screen. If it weren't too restrictive. If Times Square wasn't, it wouldn't be appropriate to deploy large-scale military weapons for suppression. We won't be so passive anymore. The Electro's fighting power is so strong, I don't know how long Captain Steve can last. I'm afraid I can't hold on for much longer. Deep in the ruins, after the electro-optical people continued to attack, Captain Steve felt a suffocating pressure. Does he feel like he's up against an opponent he can't beat? Nothing like the Red Skull he had dealt with before. The world has changed so much that it is difficult for him, an old antique who has been frozen for 70 years, to adapt. As for the Venom agents scattered around him, they were also scattered and fighting on their own. Although most of the time they are beaten passively. And what about Hawkeye and Black Widow, who had high hopes? These two people have become decorations. Can't even get close to the electric person. He could only watch helplessly as the electro-optical man floated in the air, venting his emotions wantonly. In this day, he experienced becoming a super ability person, was ignored and bullied, and witnessed the collapse of his idol's house, and he became a little manic. Captain, you disappoint me too much. Run away. Hide. What are you doing? Why don't you come out and fight with me? Like a man. Crash. The terrifying current is flying. Radiating. It's like forming layers of energy fields. Jaw-dropping. Director George, are you sure we really want to deal with this enemy? When the New York City police arrived at the scene, they were also shocked by this scene. They are just ordinary people. Where have you ever seen a scene like this that resembles a fight between gods? We should just do as the Romans do and call it an angel fight. Let's evacuate the crowd first and set up a cordon. Although we can't help much, we can't cause trouble. Director George arranged the work skillfully. You guys get busy first, I'll go over there and take a look. Officer Misty nodded obediently, but could you tell by the direction she was running? She seemed to have a mind of her own. ... Different peaks protrude. After a burst of terrifying electric current was released, Captain Steve was forced to escape from the hiding place, and appeared disgraced and within the attack range of the Electro again. He is really in an extremely embarrassed state right now. Even the simplest response cannot be achieved. He can only jump left and right repeatedly. Like a pug seeking perfection. It was completely useless to make the arrogant man kneel down before, and it seemed that even the iron-clad posture was shattered. Why put me through this? This time it was Captain Steve's turn to shut himself up. His eyes widened, just when he could hardly hold on. A shout sounded not far away. Captain Steve, can you hear me? I can hear it. As Captain America turned around and looked not far away, he saw a man wearing a jet black suit slowly walking towards him. He was extremely tall, standing 2.5 meters away, but the patterns on his body were as if they were alive. Like objects, twisting and intertwining to form a ferocious appearance like creatures with joints. It was the Dark Spider-Man who arrived. Captain Steve was moved to tears. Wong Defa. As for the electro-optical man suspended in the air, he looked confused. You must know that just a second ago, he was still in the mood of winning. But the next second, so it seems like a replica version of Spider-Man has appeared. Doesn't this sound like a dream? Call out. Crack. The inky black spider silk bounced. Another violent hurricane swept through it. Then a man over 2 meters tall fell from the air and hit Captain America hard. Captain Steve, I was sent by the organization to support you. I'm so sorry. I'm late, the Dark Spider-Man responded, and also introduced him by the way. It's so sweet. Captain Steve's eyes filled with excitement. He choked and said, "No, you came at just the right time." Just after he said this, he stretched out his finger to point at the electric man in the sky. "Let's defeat this mutant fool together. And us. ×2. Hawkeye and Black Widow also approached from behind, leaning side by side with Captain Steve and Dark Spider-Man. Don't know why. This scene actually brings tears to my eyes. Those righteous superheroes are gathered together again. And the powerful enemy they have to face, Electric Man. In midair, he rubbed the lightning with his hands and laughed. Come on, everyone, I think you are too weak." The words just fell. The next second, that terrifying power of thunder and lightning burst out. It's as if heaven's punishment is coming to the world, sweeping towards the superheroes in front of them. Cool. This is big news. Not far from Times Square, after a commercial vehicle stopped, the familiar beauty April jumped out of the car. She scanned the ruins in front of her and the ruins. The people who were confronting each other felt their blood surge into their chests. Since the previous episodes of Avengers Scandal, she has become a popular celebrity in New York City. That's all. What makes her even more excited? She also had some communication with the butcher as she wished, and even had dinner together. This is such a joyful thing. Let me see, there's Captain Steve, there's Black Widow, and there's Hawkeye. Tisk tisk, why does that person look a bit like Spider-Man? April frowned, and her intuition told her there was something hidden inside. With great power. Her partner, the photographer, beside her, could not wait to set up the equipment, just like a soldier carrying a gun and preparing to go to the battlefield. Get closer, we can get a better picture. Okay, then let's enter the war zone. April waved her arms, her beautiful figure glowing under the sunlight, like a female warrior marching towards the sun. Fearless, shocking again. ... Bang, crack. Just after the Electric Man suspended in the air fully opened his fire, countless terrifying thunder and lightning converged and intertwined, shrouding the square of thousands of square meters into a hell that ordinary people could not approach, and also turned several members of the Avengers Alliance into a hell. People were also beaten badly. But this Electro-Optical Man is not a powerful warrior after all. Although he can control thunder and lightning, can he ensure that he can cover the entire range without making mistakes? Not able to. Crash. A huge boulder was thrown into the air. Although it was shattered by the Electro. But the Dark Spider-Man took this opportunity to jump up from the ground, pulling on the spider silk and flying to the Electro-Optical Man in front of him. As he gathered strength and launched his kick, a blow weighing several tons, he smashed the Electro-Optical Man to the ground. Captain Steve knew that the persimmon was going to be pinched softly, so he rushed forward with a single step, and smashed his face with the attracting shield in his hand. Clang, clang, clang. It's quite like the angrily attacking posture when the iron shield breaks. During this process, Hawkeye and Black Widow did not stop. One of them locked the Electro's feet, and the other locked his throat. Under such a series of attacks, how could the Electro-Optical Man not even send out thunder and lightning? Just locked. Is it also because he just became an ability user? If you give him a certain amount of time to develop, the brave Captain Steve will definitely not be allowed to succeed. Mutant fool. Captain Steve waved the shield in his hand and hit him on the cheek, causing all the red and white parts to pop out. Such a humiliating gesture. Did it remind Electric Man of the previous scene where he was beaten by that fat woman? Why am I always the one who gets hurt? Why don't I have the power to decide everything? The Electro-Optical Man burst out with a particularly harsh cry. But what responded to him was Captain Steve's hard shield. Clang. A sharp pain came through. In the Electro-Optical Man's body that has not yet been completely transformed into elements, the flesh and blood tissues are whining, as if they are about to go on strike under this battle. Ding. A random mission has been detected nearby. Close black lens bracket. Electric Man's request for help. The supercriminal Electro only wanted to protect himself, but he was bullied at will. Even after gaining power, he did not get the respect he deserved. Instead, he was called a mutant fool by Captain Steve. He very much hopes that someone can help him solve his dilemma. Close black lens bracket. Ding. After accepting this mission, the host needs to assist Electro to slap him in the face and disgrace Captain America. The reward for this mission will be doubled depending on Electro's gratitude. What an unexpected surprise. After Lee Zahn in the apartment heard about the mission, did he really almost laugh out loud? You know, not long ago, Captain Steve and his team were beaten severely. But now, struggling on the front line. He also brought random tasks to Lee Zahn. What if you weren't afraid of Captain Steve? He felt like he should give him a superhero medal of honor. The Avengers have put in a lot of effort to become stronger. I must repay you generously. Lee Zahn squinted his eyes, but electromagnetism jumped on his fingertips. Thank you so much. Team Steve stood up from the ground. Although his hands were full of blood, he bowed very respectfully to the dark Spider-Man beside him. This is a captain with a great reputation. He actually bowed to his companions. I wish I could add 2 more dishes to the meal. That's right. If Dark Spider-Man hadn't appeared, will this mutant villain not be defeated? And what if this electro-optical man cannot be defeated? Then Captain Steve has become a joke, right? This would not be possible without Captain Steve's help. The Dark Spider-Man nodded and complimented each other politely. It really showed the tradition of the Black Robe reunion team. That is business, mutual promotion. Hawkeye and Black Widow looked at each other, and then happily joined the battle. As for the electro-optical man who fell to the ground, his face was still covered in blood. Speaking of having fun, Captain Steve still couldn't understand his hatred and kicked the Electro on the cheek to relieve the depression in his stomach. He is a man with an American butt. He actually lost all his hair after being electrocuted by this fool. He has been promoted to bald captain. If it is photographed by the media, it will definitely be slandered. Just when Captain Steve looked unhappy, crack, a series of shutter sounds sounded. Captain Steve suddenly became excited, and as he swept towards the front, he saw an old acquaintance. April. His face turned very ugly. Isn't this the heroic and just Avengers team? This female reporter walked over gracefully. Judging from her aura, she was no weaker than Captain America. If you want to take photos of us making fools of ourselves, I'm afraid you won't be able to do so. Captain Steve sneered and shook his head. He pointed at Electro, who was lying on the ground, and said, "We successfully defeated this mutant fool." It's not easy. April glanced at the miserable people in front of her and said, "Since the butcher left, have you finally won the battle?" You. Captain Steve's face turned red after hearing this. This woman is so hateful. Who doesn't know that Director Nick forced this big shot away without any clue? This is really a painful jab in the foot for the Avengers Alliance. I won't bother you, the great host, because we are doing a great job and we have a new partner. Black Widow saw something was wrong and stepped forward to help. She and this female reporter have always been at odds with each other. Did she know that it was this fool who kept pestering Lee Zahn that made her beauty trap fail? Isn't my skill good enough? Black Widow pursed her lips, looking at her posture. She was really high-spirited. Bang! Just when the momentum became more and more tense. Outside this scene, a red figure flashed past. Is there an enemy coming? The dark Spider-Man's face was on guard, and his spider sense clearly activated, as if a very threatening enemy had arrived at the scene. Relax, the enemy has been dealt with by us. Captain Steve glanced at everything around him, and when he saw that everything was normal, he set up his daily flag. Captain, no, there is one more. Dark Spider-Man's face continued to darken, and his spider sense, which he got from Peter, could clearly sense that the crisis was getting worse. It was just a slight jump at first. To the end, it turned out to be like a heavy drum raised in front of his face. It almost made him feel suffocated. You know, even when facing the Electron Man. Dark Spider-Man hasn't had this experience yet. But now, the enemy who had not yet reached the ground made him feel an almost suffocating twitch. Who is it? Who are you? Dark Spider-Man ran up to the crowd and shouted as if there was no one around. His demeanor looked a bit crazy. Is this what you promised there would be no problems? In the war room inside S.H.I.E.L.D., when Director Nick took in everything in front of him through the communication facility, he looked unhappy. Did he clearly hear Agent Fitz's assurance? But now, the cloned version of Dark Spider-Man actually lost control. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Agent Fitz's eyes widened and he said with great certainty, there must be a powerful enemy coming. There will be no problems with the success of my scientific research. It better be this way. Director Nick squinted his eyes, looked at the men beside him and said, if something goes wrong, don't blame me for being merciless. Agent Fitz's face turned red after hearing this, but he still held on and said, then just watch. 3 minutes passed. 5 minutes passed. Is the scene still quiet? As if nothing else happened. When Agent Fitz saw this, his face turned pale, and his mentality almost collapsed. Just when he lowered his head and was about to say, I am willing to accept any punishment. OMG, what is that red figure? There were exclamations. Agent Fitz rushed to the screen. When he saw the 3-meter-tall red figure appearing, the pent-up anger in his heart was released. He pointed at Director Nick and cursed. I'm not wrong, you're just a commander, you know nothing about scientific research. This is really whoever makes sense has the upper hand. Then Director Nick's already dark cheeks got even darker. But there is no way. He couldn't refute Fitz in front of him, he could only say sourly. Then let's see what happens next. Agent Fitz, you've gone too far, please calm down. Is this the red symbiote Tony once encountered? Captain Steve swallowed, and the expression on his face darkened again. Did he know that this person in the past almost beat Spider-Man to death? Sometime in the past. How much bigger has your body actually become? Just seeing it is intimidating. Can't imagine how to beat him. We can definitely defeat him. However, Hawkeye stood up with a solemn face. He stood next to Captain Steve and whispered, with this female reporter here, we must win this battle, otherwise, the Avengers will lose face. It's over. Yes, this battle must be won, otherwise the consequences will be unimaginable. Captain Steve frowned, still a little timid in his heart, but he had already shown it on his face. That's a hard beating. And while they were communicating, when you talk nonsense about how justice must prevail. The dark Spider-Man standing not far away changed his face wildly, and his spider sense issued a fatal warning. We can't fight. If we fight, we will all die. He turned his head and said to everyone. As soon as these words came out, there was an uproar. Hawkeye and Black Widow retorted, and Captain Steve even tried to save his face and said, you've never fought before, how do you know you'll lose? No, you don't know what enemies you will face. The dark Spider-Man's face had turned pale. He doesn't know how to persuade his companions. But the massacre not far away was running towards them brandishing 2 swords. He is very fast. Often it's because I didn't see the figure clearly just a second ago. The next second, he had already galloped in front of him. Is this dark Spider-Man the first warrior to encounter? Just when he put on a defensive posture, he was struck by the thick bloody knife. Crash. Blood swept the scene. The dark Spider-Man was hit hard and fell to the ground, creating a big deep pit. As the dust falls, the dark Spider-Man groaned in pain. Run quickly, comrades. Run quickly. This is... Captain Steve's eyes were wide open and he was almost speechless. Black Widow and Hawkeye also stood there blankly. They were all shocked by the terrifying fighting power of this enemy. What if you haven't seen the combat power of Dark Spider-Man? They won't have such a big impact yet. But after the Dark Spider-Man defeated the Electro, and was knocked away by the Carnage with overwhelming force, their hearts were at a loss. Captain, shall we continue fighting? Hawkeye's face turned red, he hesitated for a moment, and then these discouraging words came out of his mouth. But no one was there to blame him. Want to know? When facing a powerful enemy that cannot be defeated, can selective retreat be forgiven? Crack. The photographer took photos as if no one else was watching. He was extremely focused and seemed extremely serious. And April beside him also reported the situation truthfully, such as the failure of the heroic Avengers again, and that it was too early to talk big, and it would be easy to get slapped in the face. We can't retreat. Captain Steve's bright forehead was still glowing under the sunlight, and the shield he was holding also reflected, forming 2 light sources. The true light of the right path. Ah! The Dark Avenger let out an unbearable scream. He was originally cultivated using Peter cells and symbiotes, so most of them are symbiotes. This time we encountered a symbiote killer who was dedicated to massacre. Isn't it just like a mouse meets a cat? Proper door-to-door delivery. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Slaughter enjoyed the delicious meal, and at the end he commented in a milky voice, "It tastes good, just like chicken juice. It tastes just like Peter." "Captain, don't be stubborn, we can't live up to the sacrifices of our companions." Black Widow acted more rationally. She exchanged glances with Hawkeye, and then decisively picked up the captain before he ran and retreated with a look of regret on his face. Is there still reluctance on Captain Steve's face? "Wait, I want to avenge my partner." Tap tap tap. They were running fast. This look looks a bit like the New Year's Eve children taking lucky money. Mouth is not needed, but the body is honest. That's all. These fearless agents abandoned their fellow Dark Spider-Man. He retreated wildly in a panic. Did it get filmed? When April saw this, her face was filled with excitement. She liked this dirty information so much. If released, it will definitely arouse heated discussion about superheroes in society. Captain Steve should run for president, this kind of acting. That's right, they communicated. As for Carnage, he narrowed his eyes. He was not immersed in the joy of enjoying the symbiote dinner, but always remembered to cause trouble for the captain. "I only ate half of it. Although it was a bit wasteful, I still got down to business." Slaughter wiped the symbiote stump at the corner of his mouth, and then quickly moved towards Captain Steve and his group in a swooping manner. He was flying at a first-come first-served speed. He caught up with this group of people almost in the blink of an eye. Da 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 da. The Venom combat teams standing aside heroically sacrificed themselves at this moment. They held firearms and blocked this terrifying killer in a death squad manner. Courage. This is the courage of human beings to draw their swords against the strong. Tears almost overflowed from the corners of Captain Steve's eyes. But before he could finish releasing his emotions, the massacre was so devastating that it destroyed everything. Destroyed the team. Captain Steve was so angry that he couldn't speak. The door of the Quinjet was right in front of him. Finally, saved. Bang. After the three Avengers ran onto the plane, everyone just relaxed. Captain Steve let out a sigh of relief, and then said with a sad face, "This is not only a defeat for our Avengers, but also an unacceptable failure for the people of New York City. We have lost a companion we can rely on. Woohoo, I really wish I could die fighting with him on the spot." After hearing this, Hawkeye and Black Widow instinctively frowned, and they even complained in their hearts. However, he still managed to maintain the superficial peace and said, "The captain is right. That red devil, we must kill him. Yes, we, S.H.I.E.L.D, have always been the only ones to bully others. No one has ever dared to provoke us. You must come back with revenge." Just as everyone was talking enthusiastically, the pilot flying the Quinjet screamed, "Captain, we may be in trouble." "What's the trouble?" Just as the three Avengers ran to the cab, they discovered that Carnage had not given up on the pursuit and actually jumped towards them in the air with a running start. Is this guy crazy? Does he think we are not angry because he still refuses to give up? Fire! Shoot me! Captain Steve was so angry that he issued a response strategy. Boom boom boom. The pilot of the Quinjet released missiles one after another. When the Venom combat team and Captain Steve were on the ground earlier, the pilot was still worried about hurting his own people, so he didn't attack aggressively. But now what kind of guy is here who doesn't care about life and death? Let us welcome you well. Bang bang bang. Shells burst. It's like the sky is full of fire and silver flowers. Fire-like flames stirred up in the air. But after the dust fell to the ground. But didn't see the figure of the defeated massacre. He must have been killed. Hawkeye said through gritted teeth. Maybe it was blown to ashes by a cannonball. Black Widow said with certainty. He deserves it. Captain Steve also chimed in. What's this? The driver screamed. He found that above the cabin of the airplane he was piloting. On that transparent glass, but there are red silk threads that are taut, spreading, and even tightly holding the entire cabin. The glass was pulled by the thread and made a harsh sound. Is this fool trying to destroy the fighter plane? Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. He won't do it. When Captain Steve saw this, he fell into madness. For an old agent who has been frozen for 70 years. Is this really beyond his expectation? Click, click. This fighter plane made an overwhelmed squeaking sound, and even the high-strength glass had spiderweb-like cracks. Everything is moving towards a worse situation. Black Widow was the first to come to her senses. She said, "We can't sit still and wait for death. Judging from this situation, the red monster will not let us go." Hawkeye then asked, "Then what should we do?" Black Widow responded, "Captain, why don't you try a salvo of gunfire?" Squeak, squeak. The only thing that responded to her was large pieces of iron sheet breaking into pieces, accompanied by the bursts of electric current mixed with firelight. This Quinjet fighter, at this moment, he is like an old man in his twilight years. He let out a painful cry. "No, it's too late, we have to jump off the plane." Captain Steve's face was ashen. Looking at this posture, he already knew that the plane was about to be unable to withstand the offensive of the red monster. Plan for today. The only way to survive is to jump off the plane. Zila. But the next second, plans have changed. The iron door of the Quinjet was completely shattered by the red thread. Along with it, a duplication body of the massacre flowed into the cabin. "Let me see, you are Captain Steve, right?" The milk baby voice sounded. These agents were obviously stunned. But he soon became wary again. In particular, Captain Steve quietly took off the special grenade hanging from his waist. Bang! The next second, the man threw the grenade. Boom! The sound of bursting fire sounded. As the fighter plane swayed, almost crumbling, Captain Steve rushed towards the only exit with his shield in hand. "Brothers, run quickly!" Black Widow, Hawkeye. Just as the two companions reacted, they saw the captain leap out and fly towards the ground. That decisive gesture, how heroic is he in sacrificing his life? "It's broken, the captain beat me to it." The Hawkeye agent's teeth were so envious that his teeth were sore. Black Widow didn't know who she was scolding, but her face turned dark. Just when they were about to join forces to fight the massacre in front of them, this red monster actually restrained the symbiote tissue, and then chased Captain Steve. "Do you know that you only need to hold on for 10 more seconds? This Quinjet will crash." But it actually retreated. This was like a narrow escape. "I'm so grateful to the captain for sacrificing his life to help, huh?" "Yes, he is so great." Hawkeye and Black Widow looked at each other, and both saw luck and joy in each other's eyes. After all, according to the lethality of this terrifying monster, on this plane, no one can stop it. The Quinjet was severely damaged and has very little fuel left. It is expected to only last for 20 minutes. The pilot survived the disaster and reported the situation after a brief inspection. "Then what are you waiting for? We have to go back to headquarters for support." Hawkeye and Black Widow looked at each other, and then found a high-sounding reason. After all, the fighter planes are all damaged, so it is reasonable to seek support, right? As for Captain Steve being in the first grade of junior high school, don't blame them for being 15. Clang! Captain Steve fell from the sky. Although he relied on the sound-absorbing shield to absorb the shock of falling from a high place, he was still hit hard and snorted a few times. He forced himself to get up and looked at the fighter plane in the sky with a very anxious expression. More than 10 seconds passed. Still no one fell from the sky. It seems that they are entangled. "Hey, companions, I will come back for revenge." Captain Steve spoke like he was reading a script, and then started running wildly, trying to escape from this place. Boom! But the shaky fighter plane turned in the air and flew into the distance. The red monster that was originally wrapped around him suddenly fell down and chased him. Captain Steve looked very angry when he saw this. After all, according to his calculations, this red monster should destroy the fighter plane first. Unexpectedly, are you actually chasing him first? Am I the one who attracts the most attention because of my bald head? Captain Steve ran fast, almost unleashing all his potential, but the killing speed was faster. After a few dozen seconds, its sharp blade had almost touched Steve's back. That cold blade, it's like a reminder. Captain Steve turned pale. I block. This battle-experienced man was very decisive and immediately raised the shield in his hand to face him. Zilala. The giant red blade was blocked. But the carnage that was running so fast sneered. After all, he has 2 knives. Bang, bang, bang. Both swords came out, like rain hitting banana trees. A terrifying crash sounded. The massacre was seen holding 2 knives and striking out wildly, beating Steve until he almost knelt on the ground. No, don't do it. Captain Steve was so helpless and furious that he saw the sharp blade almost cutting his forehead. If the massacre is allowed to continue, he will be killed. And this situation was not what he expected. The only way to save yourself. Captain Steve pulled the grenade from his waist and prepared to repeat the same trick. Wow, I just took off the tab. But when he saw the massacre in front of him, he sneered, you want to use it a second time in front of me? Aha, the next second, the terrifying sword light burst out. Cut off Captain Steve's arm. How nice. During this day, Captain Steve experienced events such as haircuts and amputation. It can be said to be quite exciting. Ah, he collapsed to the ground, writhing wildly like a maggot, and the blood spurted out from the wound. Kill me quickly. Captain Steve started shouting like crazy. After all, when he lost his arms, it's hard to imagine what kind of waste shield would treat it like. Is it to be used as a mascot for a tour? No, Captain Steve couldn't accept this situation. But dozens of seconds passed. The massacre was not carried out. Instead, it was like waiting for something, watching a show on the spot. What's going on? Before Captain Steve could recover, he saw a familiar figure appear in the sky. It's actually the Electron Man who's here. S.H.I.E.L.D pointed at Captain Steve familiarly and said, I know you have deep resentment towards him, so I gave him to you as a gift. Really, you're too polite. The Electric Man had been broken, but he laughed heartily at this moment. He knew very well how the self-proclaimed righteous guy in front of him had made trouble for him. I will torture you very well. No, you can't do this. Captain Steve panicked and shook his head repeatedly, trying to make the two people in front of him change their minds. Let him die in battle. This is still his orthodox destination. But if you are tortured, who knows what I will go through? Wait, if you kill me, my former teammate Butcher will not let you go. When the situation came to a head, Captain Steve also began to threaten with a stern expression. Superhero Butcher. After hearing this term, the face of the Electric Man also changed slightly. He knew how strong this man was, and he had become the belief of the citizens of New York in a short period of time. Now Captain Steve has actually moved him out to be his backer. It can't be fake, right? You're lying. The Avengers have already fallen out with him. But Carnage pointed out that he was lying. Well, you Captain Steve, who has thick eyebrows and big eyes, has actually learned to lie to others. The Electric Man's face darkened, he stepped forward and slapped him hard twice. This is a heavy blow. There is also electric massage. Even Captain Steve, who has a system that surpasses ordinary people, was stunned and speechless. Slap him in the face. Kick hard. Do you know monkeys pick peaches? Hand him off to me. The massacre symbiote cheered and cheered from the side. But Captain Steve, who was the core figure, had tears streaming down his face. He whimpered and twitched, like a fish fished out of the water. Does it look like a phoenix that has lost its hair? Completely inferior to the pheasants on the roadside. Zzzz. It was also accompanied by the electric light emerging from the hands of the Electric Man, which reminded the captain of the fear of being dominated by electric current. Maybe it will really break. Crash. Half an hour later. Then Captain Steve was already foaming at the mouth and passed out violently. There was still yellow liquid flowing in his pants. Scored twice. Captain Steve peed again. It's such a joy. The Diangwang Man seemed very excited, and he spit on him hard. If he didn't think it was enough, he stepped on his face with his big sneakers and rubbed it hard a few times. Chapter 91. Thank you so much. Without your help, I wouldn't be able to take revenge. The Electric Man bowed deeply to the carnage in front of him. Even if this is a bloody monster, as long as it helps yourself, that's a good comrade. Our organization has always been generous in helping our companions. Slaughter said. What? Don't be stingy about helping. When Diangwang Man heard this, he was sure that there was an organization like them, so there would be a place to take him in. He has now severely offended the Avengers. Without the help of colleagues. Maybe he'll be caught by some Department of Homeland Security tomorrow. Can I go take a look? I mean, I want to join you. The Electric Man rolled his eyes and said nervously. Of course, my friend. Slaughter smiled. These two behave like you and me. But Captain Steve, who was lying on the ground, was still twitching. Like a salted fish that is cooked through on both sides. Like the wind blowing your crotch with a hint of sadness. Captain Steve, wake up. I don't know how much time passed. It was a gentle female voice that woke him up. But when he opened his eyes, what came into view was April's face. And what made him feel even more desperate? Next to the female reporter, the partner holding the camera had already pointed the lens at his face. At this moment, Captain Steve experienced a revolving door in life. He saw himself as a newborn. He saw how he interacted with Agent Carter when he first joined the military camp. He also saw himself protecting the country after becoming stronger. But what about the end? Has he become a joke? Not only did he have his arm cut off, he was also tortured by the electro-optical man until he peed his pants. The great Captain America actually peed. If this scene is broadcast, how can he be a hero? We can talk. Captain Steve's mouth was still foaming, but he couldn't wait to put forward the conditions. But April opened her mouth and rejected his appeal. Instead, she turned around and educated him. We journalists have the right to report the real situation. Even if you are a superhero, you cannot discredit the facts. Ooh, what sin have I committed? Why do you have to put me through this? Captain Steve's face turned green and pale several times, and then he cried on the spot. And the photographer had already pressed the shutter button and flew up. Also introduced, because you are the holy and righteous Captain America, keep smiling, face the camera, and say hello to the audience. This is a sad day, because Captain Steve was defeated by a supervillain, even his arm was cut off alive, and he peed his pants. That's great. You have done a good thing. Inside S.H.I.E.L.D. With Hawkeye and Black Widow returning first, what greeted them was a slap in the face. Director Nick was extremely dissatisfied with this kind of escape from battle behavior. Hawkeye and Black Widow did not get used to it, and opened their mouths to retort. Then what should we do? Go and die with Captain Steve. Nick, you know that if we do this, we can still preserve our vitality. We can't all fall over there, right? Besides, we are also looking for people to support Captain Steve when we come back. Isn't this unreasonable? Just after this quarrel, then Director Nick walked out of the office with a dark face. Hawkeye also ran out quickly. As for the Black Widow who was there, she leaned against the wall and whispered, "Steve, you asked for this." There's nothing wrong with that from her perspective. After all, they have been on official business with Captain Steve so many times, and they haven't been equipped with the latest equipment yet. What if this is okay? He also said to run quickly. Then he abandoned his companions. Is this just? Black Widow had a gloomy face and said silently in her heart. I began to gradually understand the butcher. What he did was right. This hellish place is hypocritical. As for Director Nick, he is also an old stubborn man who likes to play with prejudice. In the huge manor at the other end, after the massacre brought the Electro in, what came into view was the Dark Shadow Corps. They were busy going back and forth, while the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were swaying in the training ground. While sweating, scientists Green Dragon and Dr. Octopus were still busy in the laboratory, trying to develop newer products. It was also in that garden that Liaison stood tall. As the backbone, he was the intimidating force without doing anything. As for the electro-optical man, he has been brought to the front by the massacre. He expressed his emotions sincerely and gratefully. And after they had a conversation, Liaison also saw the system prompt that the task was completed. Ding, congratulations to the host for completing Electron's request for help and starting to settle rewards. Ding, congratulations to the host for obtaining Fungian, Azure Dragon bloodline. Ding, it has been detected that the Electro is extremely grateful to you. This reward will be doubled as a critical hit. Ding, congratulations to the host for obtaining the Fairy Sword, Fire Spirit Pearl. Ding, congratulations to the host for obtaining the Fairy Sword, Wind Spirit Pearl. The reward this time is quite interesting, isn't it? Liaison glanced at the words that appeared on it, and couldn't help but feel his index finger move. After all, he has obtained the blood of the crazy unicorn and evolved the blood unicorn true body. By mastering the Xuanwu true skill, he has developed the Xuanwu true body, which is considered to be the second among the 5 divine beasts. What about a Qinglong now? Isn't that just a collection of 3? If you can gather all the 5 divine beasts into one body, then it's easy to take off. Liaison quickly used the Blue Dragon bloodline. Although it is blood. But this thing is actually a dragon ball. The dense cyan streamer fell into his mouth along with the steaming dragon beads. Then, the power belonging to the Qinglong bloodline began to transform his body, which in fact gave Li Zan the talents of the Qinglong clan. After all, isn't the blue dragon in myth the sea dragon king who can control the wind and rain? And a moment and a half later, as the person involved, Li Zan felt as if he could master feng shui. A green aura of energy gathered around him, washing and spreading around him in an instant. Gradually, layers of water mist condensed. You know, in this place, the sky was clear and the sun was shining brightly just a second ago. But with the power that belongs to Blue Dragon bloodline. First there was a strong wind. Then came the heavy rain. Then countless raindrops fell, vast, almost flooded New York City. And just as the mist and water vapor intertwined, it seemed as if some terrifying giant beast was gathering behind Li Zan. Let the storm come harder. I, Steve, am no longer alive. When the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents found Captain Xiamen, he became even more agitated. If in the past, he had always been extremely calm and reasonable, how could he rely on his seniority to rely on his seniority? That also perfectly demonstrates the proud American spirit. But now, he was soaked from head to toe, and one of his arms was cut off. It's simply more embarrassing than Reservoir Dogs. Hold on, Captain, you must never give up hope in life. On the escort road, Agent Coulson was like taking care of his little wife, greeting him with greetings. It could be said that extremely gentle. Also Coulson's agent is Captain Steve's little crush. If not, you won't run after him in small steps. But Captain Steve was destined to let down his care, staring blankly at the roof of the car, muttering, I didn't lose, how could I, Steve, lose? Impossible, absolutely impossible. The accompanying medical team was very accomplished. They only took a few glances to see his state, and hurriedly explained, increase the dose. The captain is in danger. He is beginning to fall into hallucinations. After Agent Coulson heard this, he was even more nervous than Captain Steve. He asked anxiously, is he okay? Will he be okay? It's going to be okay, it just might be a little painful. The accompanying attending doctor pondered for a moment, then took out an oversized syringe from behind his back, then pointed it at Captain Steve's American buttocks and shot it into the sole. Hiss. Agent Coulson couldn't bear to stare and turned his back, and Captain Steve, who was already exhausted, even twitched, closed his eyes, and fell asleep completely. Crackling. It's raining heavily outside the ambulance. It's like a farewell song for Captain Steve. Agent Coulson couldn't help but fall into the sadness of spring and autumn. Poor Captain Steve, I wonder if he will leave any shadow. And the clouds are gathering beside that coastline. As the fog becomes denser. Did Electro and Carnage also see this spectacle? Inside this huge manor, behind Li Zan, there seemed to be a hazy, huge beast writhing and undulating. Its sharp claws poked out of the fog layer, and it was actually as big as a small car. You must know that this electric man is an electrical engineer by profession. He has received higher education, but he has never seen such a terrifying dragon. Maybe it shouldn't be called a dragon, but a real dragon. You can see 4 of them on the paw. The 5-clawed dragon can be called a golden dragon. If ordinary dragons reach this point, maybe they can go to the mythical wilderness to claim welfare. But this is another story. At this moment, Li Zan was frantically absorbing the power in the Dragon Ball, converting the true dragon bloodline into his own power. Because he had previously transformed the crazy unicorn bloodline into the blood unicorn true body, he was familiar with this operation. Crash. Just as the creature in the mist was writhing, the water vapor suddenly contracted. In an instant, they were squeezed together. The electric man stood there dumbfounded, and when he raised his head and glanced, he was so frightened that he took a few steps back. Wow. Slaughter also opened Kazilan's big eyes, his face full of praise. Just when the two of them looked up, behind Li Zan, a gigantic beast stretching hundreds of feet appeared. Towering, vast, ancient. It looks like a terrifying giant that has survived from ancient times to this day. It carries a shocking aura all over its body. This is a completely different species from the fire-breathing dragon in Western legends. It looks very noble just from its appearance. This is transcendence and shock that can be seen from the level of life. But even such a terrifying dragon is still crawling behind Li Zan. Sir, you are so cool, Slaughter said in that milk baby voice, his brows filled with praise. As for the electric man, who was completely shocked at this moment, is this the confidence of their organization? What if I could join this organization? Not to mention S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, so what? Don't be afraid even if the army comes. When personal power reaches otherworldly status, that will bring unparalleled courage and confidence to the holder. Because it is so close, everyone is exhausted and the enemy is in danger. And the green dragon Dharma image stands leisurely. Grace, so elegant, but this is only Li Zan's first harvest. The Fire Spirit Pearl and Wind Spirit Pearl obtained from the Fairy Sword world should not be underestimated. Do you know that this thing was also created by Nuwa in the small world by refining the corpses of ancient gods? It contains the power of nature. If this power is absorbed by ordinary people, don't say anything else. It is appropriate to reach the sky in one step. And if it falls into the hands of Li Zan, it will have some minor effects. After all, the human body has 5 internal organs, and the 5 internal organs are the 5 qi. After the 5 internal organs of the human body are adjusted, the 5 qi can circulate, or it can be called 5 qi Chaoyuan. Li Zan quickly swallowed the 2 original beads into his belly, but when he saw the blazing flames and the gentle breeze flowing, 4 colors of light burst out from Li Zan's body. The dominance of thunder, the arrogance of fire, the swiftness of the wind, the vitality of wood. Different forces are intertwined, influencing each other. The 5 internal organs in Li Zan's body gradually turned into layers of halo, just like layers of baptism. Is this greater than the transformation effect of blood on the human body? After all, these spirit beads, but they are all extracted from the essence of each god. Transforming the body and improving Taoism are all basic operations. What if it could be further mastered? Even gods can be summoned. As Li Zan became more and more proficient in controlling this type of energy, the scene in New York City, which was supposed to be pouring rain, changed in a flash and became sunny. The sudden change in the situation is all because of the man in front of me. The electro-optical man's admiration for Li Zan grew deeper and deeper. Does he know that compared with his own strength, is it like a firefly compared to a bright moon? Small. Too small. And Mr. Li Zan is still a superhero who has conflicts with the Avengers. If I follow him, the road will be broadened. The electric man was excited, but his face turned red, and then he asked the carnage beside him. And Slaughter also praised him all the time, fooling. Let him fear Li Zan like a mountain. Inside Hell's kitchen. In this cold drainage pipe. But there were waves of strange noises coming out. Following the shallow traces of water, I walked towards the interior, only to find that after the corner, it suddenly became clear. An abandoned platform appeared in front of me, with a series of tables, chairs and wooden beds placed on it. A super space that had not appeared for a long time. The villain spider demon was scanning the messages on the computer attentively. And next to his head, Venom's head gathered together as the black symbiote material squirmed. Peter, did you see anything interesting again? I saw something disgusting. What's going on? Come and see for yourself. Peter turned the computer over with a bad look, and on the screen, a message about Captain America being defeated by a supervillain was playing. Okay, isn't this something worth celebrating? Venom cheered, and even his ferocious face became relaxed. But they cloned another us. Peter's face was full of violence. He hammered the table hard, and with the loud noise, black spider threads spread out. Is there such a thing? Venom was obviously unable to sit still. You must know that it has suffered a lot since it gave birth to Massacre. Now we know about the new clones developed by S.H.I.E.L.D. Isn't this just rubbing salt into their wounds? Peter, we have to go find trouble with them. That's for sure. Peter nodded, and then analyzed it. In this case, it stands to reason that Agent Fitz has a criminal record, so the suspicion is greater, but according to news clues, there are traces of the symbiote in the home of Iron Man Stark, and they are accomplices. There is also the possibility of research. Then let's go find him alone first. In the past few weeks, we have cooperated with each other and have formed a good bond. No matter who it is impossible to defeat us. Wow. Just when Venom finished speaking, the countless black symbionts squirmed and combined. Let Spider-Man be synthesized into a state with 2 heads and 4 arms. In this case, Peter and Venom have the same mind, and can achieve a state of no dead ends in the front and rear. Coupled with the cooperation of the spider silk and the symbiote silk thread, it can be said that the flexibility is greatly enhanced. Yes, not only is the connection between us closer, but I also feel that my strength, endurance and speed have increased significantly. It's like unlocking the potential in your body. Spider-Man Peter said, "It's time to show Iron Man and the members of S.H.I.E.L.D. Half a day later, in this villa near the sea, after Iron Man Tony was drugged by alcohol all day long, he began to refuse strangers to approach him. Even his female assistant can only be seen when delivering drinks. "Tony, you can't go on like this," Pepper persuaded. "Isn't it good that I'm like this? I feel very comfortable." Tony acted extremely indifferent. He spread his hands, took out another bottle from the wine library, and drank by himself. "Tony, what else does little Pepper want to say?" The mechanical door was closed again by the arrogant Tony. She stood there for a while, then had no choice but to walk away and return to the villa on the ground. "Just be decadent, boss." Little Pepper looked at the endless coastline outside the glass cover and said with some taste, "Go live with your wine." And just on the beach not far away, but a black figure flashed past. Gululu, following a sound of swallowing. It's the crisp wine bottle falling to the ground. Tony's face was red. He was wearing a simple tea-sleeve, and he collapsed on the sofa without paying attention to his image. Zitza. The electric light above his head flickered on and off due to unstable voltage. Jarvis checks to see if there's something wrong with the power supply. "Don't disturb the nature of my drinking." "Yes, boss." After a crisp response, in the corner of this room, a simple robot moved and slid towards the second underground floor. Clang. Only 10 seconds later, but there was a heavy crashing sound. This was followed by a very anxious warning from Jarvis. "Mr. Stark, I was attacked by a black creature. I suspect some mutants are causing trouble." Tony put down his wine glass. A gloomy look appeared on his face. "Comparing the target to the database, I need to know who it is." After comparison, the comparison is complete. There is a high probability that it is Spider-Man. "How dare my defeated generals come to trouble me?" Iron Man Tony's expression became even worse. "You must know that the last time they met, he almost killed him on the spot. What if it wasn't because it takes time to prepare the satellite cannon? He wouldn't capsize in the gutter. But now, this arrogant mutant didn't just find a place to hide in New York City, but instead came to our door. How audacious. Then give him some color. Just equip the 3.0 version of the Venom armor." "But, boss, this type of armor hasn't been fully debugged yet." "It's okay, just listen to me." Following Tony's instructions, the pure white armor was installed on the man again, and when the mask finally closed, the superhero Iron Man returned to the world. It stuck. The next second, the black palm pulled hard to the edge of the door, and then a dark spider demon nearly 2.5 meters tall appeared. When Peter and Venom sensed the presence of companions in the laboratory, their expressions darkened. "Do you know that this matter is closely related to Iron Man Tony? Isn't this old boy with thick eyebrows and big eyes a good person?" "Venom, we need to give him some color," Peter said through gritted teeth. "You must know that he has conflicts with S.H.I.E.L.D, Iron Man, and Captain America. Plus what happened with the Venom Squad and Dark Spider-Man in Times Square. It can even be said that it touched his bottom line. Unforgivable." Crash. The spider demon rushed towards Iron Man in front of him. "It's true that if there is a way to heaven, you don't take it, but if there is no way in the land, you just go to it." Iron Man Tony is also full of resentment. You know, even if he drinks quietly in his villa, he will be disturbed. Can Uncle really tolerate it? Auntie can't bear it either. Beat. Only a good fight. Bang. Bang. One of the two people dived, and the other was boosted by flames, and they collided hard in the center of the room. What followed was a shockwave visible to the naked eye that spread out the surrounding high-precision instruments instantly. Most of it was destroyed. But the fight between the two did not stop. I saw Iron Man launching small missiles and hitting Peter. Bang 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 bang. The flames came out with violent explosions. But the Venom only stagnated for a moment before it stretched out its sharp claws and grabbed hard at the steel machine in front of it. Straightforward. He actually tore off part of the steel armor. How could this be? Tony was almost dumbfounded. However, Peter was extremely jealous when his enemies met, and his attacks in conjunction with Venom became more and more fierce. You must know that he has been training in that dark sewer for a long time. His heart has long been as black as sewage. Feel it. This is the pain from the spider demon, and I will take back whatever you imposed on me. That somewhat shrill roar, with two sharp claws firmly grabbing the steel arm. Then the struggle began. Charged cannon. No. Weapons depot, gunfire. After Tony realized that the 3.0 version of the armor was not enough to compete with the spider demon, he directed Jarvis to release the weapons arsenal that came with his villa. But, Mr. Stark, you might get hurt. It's too late. Tony shouted anxiously. Also at his call, the weapons arsenal in this villa has been mobilized. What followed was fierce flames accompanied by missiles flying. In the past, the firepower hidden in this weapons warehouse was enough to destroy an entire military base. But today, it is used to destroy myself. Boom. The walls shattered. Boom. The earth was torn apart. It was like experiencing an earthquake with a magnitude above 7. Spider Demon Peter has a spider sense and has a particularly clear perception of these crises, so he is inevitably affected. The Iron Man also took this opportunity to quickly dodge and fly towards the edge of the cliff that was only 10 meters away. Judging from the rhythm of the gunfire, it only takes 10 seconds at most to blast the hole, and I can escape smoothly. Spider-Man, I'm going to make him pay. Tony was angry, but he was beaten so hard that he ran away with his head in his arms. It's so humbling. But fortunately, the situation has not reached its worst. Crash. When Iron Man saw a gap appearing on the cliff in front of him, he galloped forward with full firepower. Getting closer, he could already feel the salty sea breeze blowing on his face. But, the dark, sticky tentacles grabbed it at the last second. No, Iron Man! Tony screamed in horror. But Tony's scream didn't change anything. Even if most of the house has collapsed. But he still didn't escape. Under the pull of this venom, we are getting closer and closer to the bloody mouth. Arrogant Tony, I will make you pay the price. Peter smiled crazily. And there was a strong murderous intent on his face. Iron Man is a little confused at this moment. As a billionaire, he doesn't want to die with the guy in front of him. He still has a lot of money that he doesn't enjoy. How could you be willing to give up like this? But under this salvo of artillery fire, even if it is a laboratory built according to the highest defense level, it cannot withstand the artillery fire from the inside out. Mr. Stark, it will be destroyed in 20 seconds at most. Please leave quickly. Concentrate your firepower and attack me and Spider-Man indiscriminately. Mr. Stark, are you crazy? No, this is the only way. Boom. After the catharsis accompanied by roaring artillery fire. This was supposed to be the villa of the famous Iron Man, but it was destroyed. Next to this lonely coast, only an empty ruin is left, as well as a sophisticated laboratory buried in reinforced concrete. Cough, cough, cough. Just after this piece of dust gradually returns to deathly silence. A heavy cough sounded. Along with this, Iron Man Tony limped out. His originally hard steel armor seemed to have been riddled with holes and turned into garbage that even scrapyards didn't want. But after he took off the mask, he was under the infrared scanning. But no traces of life messages were found in this place. It seems that this nasty spider demon is dead. Tony's eyes were full of joy. No, 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 you'd better kill me. It's in the healing room inside S.H.I.E.L.D. After Captain America was rescued, he fell into a manic state. According to the explanation of the scientific researchers, he was subjected to inhuman abuse, which led to mental disorder and some post-war stress disorder. But for Hawkeye and Black Widow, they prefer to call it, Captain Steve is crazy. Captain Steve is crazy and would do this series of illogical actions. But he did lose face in the fierce battle with Electro, and was even taken bad photos by reporters. We have to do our best to make up for the consequences of this bad press. Outside Captain Steve's treatment room, Hawkeye, Black Widow, and director Nick were chatting. Although he never leaves Captain Steve, in fact the struggle is for the dominance of the Avengers team. Isn't it? In this team, the top spot is Captain Steve, followed by Iron Man, and then Hawkeye, Black Widow and others. Maybe we should give Captain Steve more time, Agent Coulson suggested quietly from the side. But outside public opinion will not give the captain a long time. You know, there are many other organizations in the world who want to drag S.H.I.E.L.D down, so we can't waste a moment. Black Widow spoke honestly, and from her tone, you can also see how much she values the position of captain. It also happened once that Steve concealed the latest equipment and personnel, and was the first to slip away. So, this poisonous widow does not want to put her hope of survival on others. She wanted to control her own destiny. I think Natasha Romanoff is right. Hawkeye agent was talking to the side. You know, in the beginning, he pulled Black Widow into S.H.I.E.L.D. The personal training between these two people is profound. So naturally the conversation was directed towards her. Director Nick stood aside and watched this farce. As a 100-year-old agent, he naturally knew what they were planning. But it was not completely exposed. Instead, it's preparation in mud. First of all, the Avengers team cannot engage in small group thinking, nor can it work in isolation. Secondly, Captain Steve has not replied yet, and he cannot be left alone to take charge of the overall situation. Therefore, we have to suppress and appease at the same time. Agent Coulson, could you please go to the media and explain on behalf of S.H.I.E.L.D. agent? Eagle Eye agent, Fitz seems to have developed a brand new material, which has greatly improved the power of flying knives. You can go and take a look. Natasha Romanoff, the laboratory has recently developed a venom suit. Go ahead and choose one. Director Nick spoke and decided. Make sure there is something for everyone. It can be said that it takes care of personal emotions. I really managed to hold a bowl of water. And inside this ward, as Steve goes crazy, no one knows, his good brother Steel Brother was caught in a life and death crisis. Kakakaka, in the place where the ruins should have been. But there was a heartbreaking sound. Is it accompanied by the chilling sound of chewing? There are still people alive. Crunch, crunch, crunch. No, not a living person. The huge spider demon that looked like a terrifying beast crawled out. At this moment, he stretched out 6 arms, like a human centipede. But his counterattack speed is much faster than the centipede. Crash! Peter ejected the spider silk, like a missile, and hit the Iron Man hard. Just under this blow, that armor that was originally extremely hard actually disintegrated. No, we can talk. Tony spoke, still thinking about moving back to defeat. But Peter, who was running up to him, had already reached out and inserted his hand into his abdomen and then pulled hard. Drenched with blood, this playboy's 2 kidneys were just taken out. Severe pain mixed with despair. Ah, let this man who was supposed to be the people's hero scream. Half kneeling in front of the spider demon. How ironic. Give me your most sincere thanks to me and my companions. Peter moves closer. He spoke with that leisurely emphasis. Tony was so angry that he was shaking all over. Even if you are mad with anger. Even if you want to kill the enemy in front of you. But Tony can't do it. Extremely ironic. The famous Iron Man couldn't defeat the super criminal standing in front of him, but was humiliated by him. This can be said to be a slap in the face to all superheroes. As for Tony, the physical blow was still violent. You must know that those 2 man's kidneys are the foundation of life. What if there is no such thing? How can he still move around? Tony reluctantly opened his mouth to say something, but Peter in front of him raised his hand and punched him to the ground. The soles of feet covered with black mud appeared in front of him. Kneel down and apologize to my shoes. This increasingly harsh and humiliating move came. Tony was almost blinded, but when he looked around, he found that the laboratory had been completely destroyed with the gunfire. Even communications were destroyed. Can't connect to Jarvis. The anger in his heart was suppressed again. If he were not restricted by various conditions, he would definitely kill the man in front of him. Will he let Peter know? Who is the real superhero? Don't push people too hard. I have a satellite cannon. The worst is, we all die together. Tony gritted his teeth and glared angrily. If Iron Man is with you, this is also a beautiful thing, right? Peter said with a smile. Then come and try it. After Tony heard this, he didn't dare to show his weakness, so he simply started a tit-for-tat confrontation, not daring to show any flaws. Is this also the time? What if Peter saw that she looked stern and felt angry? It must be that you can't eat it and walk away. That being the case, let's see who is bolder. Tony, are you okay? Just as the two forces were gradually becoming at war with each other, the figure of Little Pepper appeared in the open space not far away. When Tony saw this woman, the corners of his eyes twitched and his body couldn't help but tremble a few times. And this scene was caught in Peter's eyes. Hey, let me see, the famous playboy actually has a woman he cares about. I just don't know how many times she can be beaten by me. He spoke lightly, but the venom lingering on his body revealed ferocious claws. Apparently a threat, but Iron Man had to accept this threat. Because he has no trump cards in a short period of time. What exactly do you want to do? After Tony pondered for a few seconds, he finally began to loosen his mouth and surrendered to the man in front of him. I want you to kneel down in front of me and kiss my shoes like a servant. Peter said with confusion, to know why he turned into a spider demon. It also comes from the hands of S.H.I.E.L.D. agent and Iron Man and Captain America. What if they weren't aggressive? Peter should live a happy life. He also has a small family of his own. But when Peter's identity was known to the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, everything was ruined. He was like a wild dog with nowhere to turn, and could only find food in the dark sewers. What's more, he has to study the cells and venom tissue taken from his own body to do evil. This is simply too much. That's why Peter came to the door, dug out two of Iron Man Tony's waists, and made him kneel in front of him to beg for mercy. Killing is not terrible. The heart-piercing blow is the most painful blow. I will never bow to evil. Iron Man fell to the ground and still spoke harshly, but his body had already obeyed honestly. He just knelt there and kissed the toes of Peter's shoes. Tears fell from the corners of his eyes. Protecting her doesn't count as bowing down. Not waiting yet, Tony encouraged himself. Clang. Then Peter raised the sole of his foot and kicked him hard on the head. The next second, blood spurts. The billionaire known as the most powerful fell in a pool of blood. No, on the hillside, Xiaojiao, who had witnessed everything that happened, couldn't help crying and stood up. Just as she was swooping down and running down, just after she climbed over the ruins and the remains of the house, what came into view was indeed shocking. A chilling scene. There were two huge amounts of gaps in Tony's abdomen, and blood was flowing out. As for him, he was lying on the ground twitching as if he was having a strep attack. In the past, the man who made her angry was as fragile as a child at this moment. Little Pepper's face turned pale. But she could do nothing but dial the phone in her hand and arrange for medical treatment. And on that corner of the coastline, as the dark black creatures squirmed and gathered in the dark shelter, Peter squinted at the setting sun and muttered, and S.H.I.E.L.D., they can't escape either. What? Tony was injured too. After the news of Iron Man's injury spread like radiation. Director Nick from S.H.I.E.L.D. couldn't sit still. You know he is very optimistic about this playboy. After all, Tony's dad is the founder of S.H.I.E.L.D. A tiger father has no dog sons. Tony also developed a steel armor and became a superhero among the people, with great fame for a while. But after meeting the butcher, he was frustrated all the way. A few weeks ago, you were still drinking heavily every day. If that's the case, that's it. But Tony now, even your waist was stolen. Are you lying in the operating room dripping with blood while being rescued? What should I do? There's been a lot of noise in the media about Captain Steve's defeat. I'm afraid I can't stand it anymore. Just when Director Nick had a headache. Not far away, Agent Hill came over and reported another piece of bad news. Although it was already expected, and arranged for Coulson to handle the public relations crisis. But didn't expect it. This time the counterattack was so fierce. It seems we have to arrange for Captain Steve to come out personally to solve the problem. Director Nick frowned. What if it weren't for the irreversible time? He also wanted to give Captain Steve some time to recover. But the current situation is indeed extremely dangerous. Arrange for me a 3D projection of Agent Carter. I want Captain Steve to remember that there are people he cares about, said the brazen director. Okay, I'll make arrangements when I get back, Agent Hill said decisively. And just after she quickly left the corridor of the medical room, Director Liu Dan took out an old-fashioned signal transmitter from his arms, and as if caressing his lover's skin, he rubbed it a few times and hid it in his arms like a treasure. The world is changing so fast. But Captain Marvel is still S.H.I.E.L.D., and even the final trump card of all mankind. And just when S.H.I.E.L.D. is extremely busy due to the recent Electro Man incident. Just when Tony Stark was in danger because 2 kidneys were dug out. Hankmer Advanced Industries made a big move. It was also the time before when Tony Stark provoked members of Congress in Congress, causing them great dissatisfaction. Lee Zahn appeared like a savior. He sent out Ivan and Dooney, the inventive genius from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This entire situation has undergone a reversal change. Want to know in this society? Technology is always the primary productive force. In the past, Iron Man Tony represented the most advanced productivity. But what now, with the emergence of Ivan and Dooney? Did they break Iron Man's blockade in this top field? Tony's suit is no longer unique. That would mean huge amounts of revenue. President Justin stood behind the press conference stand with a happy face. After he reached cooperation with the military forces. So I tried every means to expand the influence of this incident. At this dinner called Iron Overlord press conference, he invited almost half of the reporters in New York City. The rest depends on our appearance, Justin said to Ivan beside him. And this man was also wearing a suit and tie, and he looked gentle and polite. Only the smile flowing from the corner of his mouth still retained that wildness. We're going to give Tony Iron Man a serious blow. Crash. Fireworks mixed with the curtain gradually opened. Justin said, then let us welcome the arrival of this new era. And the next second, countless flashlights came. It's like a precursor to what happened before Glory. Ivan couldn't wait to walk out. That's tonight. He will completely tear off the hypocritical mask of the Tony family and completely shatter his confidence as an armor maker. He's going to defeat the evil Iron Man. Present a different technological style to the world. Z-la-la. After the S.H.I.E.L.D. members released the woman who was obsessed with Captain Steve. He is like a robot that has lost its power, standing there blankly. Agent Carter, my love, why did you show up? After this woman appeared, that bald head, the man with the broken arm. But he climbed out of bed without hesitation. Even though the injuries on his body have not recovered, it does not affect his current, Ma-Lu, at all, right? What if Captain Steve has something in his heart that is hard to get over? That must have been what Carter said to his commander before the plane crashed 70 years ago. I still want you to dance. Who would have thought about that? When Captain Steve woke up, 70 years had passed. During this period, Captain Carter had been married, had children, and was getting old. And Steve is still a frozen old bacon. Pain. It hurts so much. And now, with the emergence of Knocket Agent's lifelike 3D projection, the soul of true love cuckold hidden in Captain Steve's body is burning again. He almost crawled up to the projection in an awkward and unusual manner. But when he reached out and touched it, but you haven't touched a real person. What's going on? Captain Steve beat his head with his remaining broken arm, trying to wake up from this hallucination. But what's sad, even if dozens of seconds have passed, he still can't touch the beloved woman in front of him. Captain Steve, calm down, this is Director Nick's plan. In this short period of time, we tried all means to restore your consciousness, but unfortunately you did not respond. Agent Hill walked in from the door, and when she pressed the button in her hand, the influence of the 3D Carter agent disappeared in front of Steve. No, Agent Carter, how can I live without you? Captain Steve's response was undoubtedly much more intense. Like the man I loved forever. Captain, after you regain your composure, you should read the latest news. Now the outside world's reputation for you has dropped to a historical freezing point. We need you to provide a clarification to the outside world. After Agent Hill finished speaking, she walked towards the door. As she was walking, she turned back and said, Iron Man Tony's situation is not good either. Captain Steve, please cheer up quickly. Shameless shield. He actually used the iron shield bond. Tony, is Tony injured too? Captain Steve originally collapsed on the ground and didn't want to say anything. But after that man's name appeared, there was still some confusion in his eyes. After all, what about Tony's father, Howard? But I once went to have dinner with Agent Carter. Gritting your teeth, make a fist. What more complicated emotions surrounded Captain Steve? Just as he slowly stood up and walked towards the dressing table equipped with a mirror, what came into view was the bright reflective forehead. And on his right arm. It's also empty. Apparently it was because it took too long. As a result, his broken arm was not reconnected. Now I am also a disabled warrior. Captain Steve had a self-deprecating smile on his face. He shook his head and asked himself, what if the butcher was here? I certainly wouldn't have encountered this. But why? Why isn't he there? He's not here. He's not here. Tears mixed with complaints. There was a roar. It was like being stabbed somewhere in the weak spot. Captain Steve burst into tears. After a while, as the man finished dressing up, his eyes were red and swollen, and he slowly walked out of the bathroom. After he walked out of the room, what came into view were familiar superheroes in 2s and 3s. Captain Steve, have you recovered? Very good. The Avengers can be saved. A long-lost smile appeared on their faces. But Captain Steve behaved calmly. When he walked up to Agent Hill, he said, get me a wig, I want to hold a press conference. Agent Hill frowned when he heard this. Isn't this too rushed? When Captain Steve heard this, the smile on his face became even more mocking. Isn't this what Director Nick expected? Don't waste time, get ready. And seeing his attitude, although Agent Hill was a little dissatisfied, he still walked away quickly and worked hard to prepare for him. As for the eagle-eyed agent not far away, when he saw this, he also frowned. What kind of medicine is Captain Steve selling in his gourd? As a marksman who has seen his dark side, the eagle-eye agent knows that he is not as kind and righteous as he claims to be. If you have to use any words to describe it, that's hypocrisy. What if someone were to judge him based on the media's evaluation? You will definitely suffer a big loss. But I'm not a vegetarian after getting brand new equipment. The eagle-eye agent lowered his head and glanced at the brand new suit, and his confidence increased a little. Natasha Romanoff and I join forces. No matter what happens, we won't capsize in the gutter, right? Dr. Banner has also disappeared since the last dispatch mission. If not for this, our team can still maintain harmony. I don't know what Dr. Banner thinks. He actually wants to break away from S.H.I.E.L.D. This is too much to think about. But after Captain Steve recovers, the Iron Man who collapsed on the hospital bed did not recover. His two waists were pinched. Now only the large artificial iron waist maintains the body's most basic metabolism. But is this not a long-term solution after all? Pepper crawled beside his bed with tears on her face. She glanced at Tony in front of her, her eyes showing reluctance and pity. Even if this man lives and drinks all day long, but he is still a good boss. After becoming Tony's secretary, Pepper bought a car and a house, which gave her a lot of convenience. This is a money tree, based on emotion and reason. She didn't even expect the big tree to fall. Cough, cough, cough. A slight cough sounded. Tony showed signs of recovery. After seeing this, little Pepper hurriedly stood up, walked aside in small steps, and wanted to call the nurse over, but just as she took 2 steps away. Pause. Tony called weakly. Stark, I'm here. Pepper hurriedly replied. Have I reached heaven? Tony joked in his usual tone. I'm sorry to tell you, Mr. Stark, are you still alive? Pepper covered her mouth, with a very moved expression on her face. How long have I been unconscious? Are you interested in telling me what happened? Tony forced himself to lean on the hospital bed and spoke in a seemingly relaxed tone. But people who know him well know. This is the calm before the storm. Xiaojiao has been a secretary for several years, so she naturally knows her boss's temper, so she naturally chooses some beautiful words to talk about. And Tony felt comfortable listening to it, especially when he knew that Captain America was also deflated. He couldn't help but laugh out loud. But the news that followed made his face change drastically. This is what Tony himself requested. Boss, tell me about the incident at Justin's company, he said. Tony, your injury is not fully healed yet. When you get better, you will be busy with the company's affairs, right? Little Pepper said perfunctorily. No, I want to know now. Tony still wanted to know. Well, they did make big changes. Little Pepper gritted his teeth to report back on the news report issued by Henkmer Advanced Industries. And in this process, there is also the edited video push. Technology always belongs to the people. Our aim is to allow everyone to enjoy the convenience of technology. The arrogant Iron Man is a thing of the past. Starting from today, Henkmer Advanced Industries will use mechanical armor to defend the people and defeat all invaders. After Tony saw the news, his face turned red, and his blood was clearly boiling over. Pissed, He opened his mouth and vomited a large mouthful of blood. Obviously very angry. Isn't it no wonder that Tony behaved so radically? Do you want to know that besides his title of billionaire, only Iron Man can take it? In the first half of this life, he carried the bad reputation of a playboy and played with young models all over the world. But becoming a superhero only takes a few months. For this job, although Tony said he didn't care, he was still very honest and developed several models in the basement. But now, after the company controlled by Justin completely pushed the news to society. Is this already digging into Tony's body? He almost pointed at his nose and cursed. Didn't you brazenly say in Congress that no one can develop a battle armor? What about now? In just a few months, a brand new battle armor has been developed. It was like trampling his personal dignity into the dirt. Tony, wake up. Little Pepper was obviously frightened when she saw this. She didn't want anything to happen to the man in front of her. What if even he fell? So what else should she do? Then how can she make money to support her family? And what is worthy of luck? Cough, cough, cough. After Tony coughed violently a few times, he finally took a breath again. He said to Pepper in front of him, "Prepare information for me. I won't let Hankmer Advanced Industries completely defeat me." Pepper wiped her eyes and said with tears in her eyes, "I will prepare, but Tony, you have to pay attention to your health. After all, you only have a mechanical kidney now." "I know, I will take care of myself." Tony said this almost through gritted teeth. He was stabbed again by Little Pepper. A critical blow to his self-esteem. You must know that in addition to scientific research life, then he would have a great time. Without these two kidneys, how can he live? He can't imagine. I didn't even dare to think about it. And at the same time, after the press conference ended, then the guests and reporters in the hall also successfully carried out the second stage of the dance. You come and I go. How unpleasant is it? Come here, toast to the future, and I'll toast you too. President Justin picked up the wine in his hand and congratulated Ivan beside him. In his view, the Ivan in front of him is undoubtedly a blessed general. Not only is he a good player in research and development, after he took control of Iron Overlord, that was a devastating move that defeated Tony's good friend. Is this not over yet? In his speech this afternoon, Ivan also showed sharp words, criticizing the Stark family business as worthless, and delivered an important speech. In the future, the Ivan family he represents as the orthodox Iron Man. It's a pity that Tony didn't jump out to clarify. It would be great if he could be defeated. President Justin said with some regret. Just wait, Tony will definitely jump out. Ivan replied definitely. As a top scientist, he knew too well the pride of Tony, who claimed to be the #1 genius in the United States. He would never allow anyone to act presumptuously in front of him. He really doesn't seem to be avoiding a fight. He will have to respond within a week. President Justin said. What I'm looking forward to is Tony stepping up to the challenge. Ivan said confidently. If it is just the beginning, he could only rely on the suggested whiplash armor. Ivan is not guaranteed to win Iron Man. But who made him join Master Liaison? Under Master Liaison, there are also two generals, Dr. Green Dragon and Dr. Octopus. Coupled with the invention genius Donnie from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This is already a King Bomb combination. What if you can't defeat Iron Man alone? Then he might as well just hang himself. Now we're just waiting for Tony to throw himself into the trap. I'm sorry for everyone. I failed everyone's expectations. My ability is not enough. I couldn't defeat the super criminal. One after another. After Hankmer Advanced Industries demonstrated the latest scientific research results, Captain Steve of S.H.I.E.L.D. also stood up and showed a wave of personal superb eloquence. As he tells it, what was supposed to be an ending where he was defeated and humiliated turned into a feeling of glory despite defeat. And he also gave a hymn to mankind for this battle. That is courage and tenacity. Captain Steve raised the star shield in his hand again, and as he spoke sadly, the empty cuffs became more glaring. We will eventually defeat those powerful enemies. Even some mutant enemies. Humanity will win. As the man talked about being emotional, his eyes filled with tears and he was so excited that he could not speak. Crash. The reporters in the audience also gave excited applause. When it comes to selling emotions, Captain Steve is the best. If Hawkeye and Black Widow hadn't witnessed the battle with their own eyes, would they have been deceived by this gesture and mistakenly thought that Captain America had great moral integrity? Learned. Black Widow stood behind the stage with dull eyes. When she heard the emotion, she couldn't help but clap her hands and applaud. Captain Steve still has the ability. That's right, that's right. Eagle Eye Agent also praised him. He is indeed a fighting hero from 70 years ago. He really has two skills. But after the two people looked at each other. But he showed an intriguing smile. A sneeze. Captain Steve, who was standing on the podium, shuddered. But when he looked around. But I saw a crowd of joyful people again. Clang. As Captain Steve gradually reversed the criticism. Inside Hell's Kitchen, the villains were so angry that they smashed an ashtray. Did they really like to watch superheroes get busted? I didn't expect that even to this extent. You can actually fight back. S.H.I.E.L.D, you don't know how to do things, and you just like to do stupid things all day long. Those superheroes deserve to die. By the way, this is strange. Have you noticed that Daredevil seems to be out and about less recently? He used old and young people to support him. Didn't he show up as an invulnerable? What kind of green devil is there? He really doesn't leave a way for us ordinary people to survive. While everyone in the Russian Brotherhood was chatting. A few blocks away, the riots continued. I only saw Leo, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle wrapped in a blue bandage, running quickly. Looking at the blood flowing in his hands, do you know? The man had been through another battle. It's a coincidence. After he came into contact with Luke Cage, he seemed to be involved in an invisible whirlpool. If you practice in Lizon's manner, that's it. As long as he comes out. Then he would run into those gangsters. Just after Leo finished solving the last gangster trying to escape, a message came. None other than Luke Cage's. I'm injured and need your support. What kind of trouble has this invulnerable man gotten into? Although Leo didn't know, he still put the long knife in his hand back, then dived and jumped towards the tall building not far away. This period of time was not in vain. When he learned about the power of fire attribute from Lizon. He even mastered explosion by analogy. He can rely on the power of the fire element to add strength to his running and fighting. Bang bang bang. He only heard the violent explosion sound coming from under his feet. Leo rushed straight to the roof of the tall building. Subsequently, it even galloped at a speed beyond ordinary people's expectations. Behind him was a roar like a cannon. Like a salute car entering a crematorium. Bang, bang. At the same time, just next to the gangster garage a few blocks away, I saw a group of gangsters holding guns and sweeping across the warehouse in front of them. A large number of bullet casings remained on the ground. Some of the walls have been marked like a hornet's nest. Cornell Stokes, the leader of the Viper gang, was on the scene to provide guidance. He glanced with a cold face and saw several drops of blood on the ground not far away. As he walked forward and stretched out his hand to touch, there was still a warm feeling. Apparently the man hadn't gone far. Haha, Luke, I want to see where you run to this time. Stokes clenched his fists and seemed confident of victory. At this moment, the younger brothers not far away seemed to have discovered something and started running quickly. But after some searching, they found it was a black cat. Not that Luke Cage, the short and fat white man said, and then he squeezed the black cat to death. Pooh. Stokes was a little dissatisfied after hearing his younger brother's report, and issued an order, the people are here. Anyone who can't escape should be found by me. Otherwise, don't leave work. Yes. What followed was a flurry of responses. Those poor migrant workers. Work started again. There was a dark figure hiding under the cardboard next to the trash can not far from everyone. This was the Luke everyone was looking for. He looked sluggish, and you could clearly see that blood was still oozing out from his lower abdomen. For men with the toughest skin, it's unimaginable. Want to know in the past? Even if the missile explodes, it can't break Luke's skin either. Did that missile come from the laboratory where I was made? He had a troubled look on his face, and when he noticed the gangsters coming towards him with heavy weapons, he became even more irritable. If it really doesn't work, just fight them. Luke planned. Although he was injured, if done well, there was still a glimmer of hope. The searching boy is also constantly approaching. 50 paces away, 30 steps, 5 steps. As Luke felt the gangster getting closer and closer, The murderous intention in his heart became increasingly difficult to hide. Click. Just when he was about to take action, the sound of glass being smashed was heard. A turtle man more than 2 meters tall jumped up. He broke open the window openly and fell in front of everyone in the Viper gang. Let me see. Oh. The famous Luke was injured by you. He greeted him familiarly. Are you that one again? Stokes looked at the turtle man in front of him with an unkind expression. Not satisfied with someone taking a piece of the pie. Me. I will tell you after I kill you. Leo slowly pulled out 2 knives from behind, and then the flames covered them, as if the flaming blades were unsheathed. At the same time, just next to a remote town in America. After Thor had been bewitched by the drunken beauty. The S.H.I.E.L.D. agents also concentrated on studying the Thor's hammer. The person in charge of this project is none other than Agent Fitz's companion. That's none other than Simmons' agent. As a female scientist with great experience in biology and chemistry, she does have a leader. Not only did she know the powerful potential in Thor's body for the first time, but she also confirmed the plan called Gentle Country through remote discussions with Agent Fitz. Facts have proved that this plan is very effective, making Saul happy. If Father Odin, who was far away in Asgard, saw this scene, he might be so angry that he would punish humans with thunder. And high risks will inevitably lead to high returns. Thor's hammer is so amazing. Simmons' agent reached out and almost wanted to touch. Bang bang bang. But there was a sudden knock on the door outside the house. This interrupted the Simmons agent's actions. She quickly retracted her arm, patted her clothes, and stood next to the glass container, pretending to watch Thor's hammer as if nothing had happened. But what happens next? 4 male agents escorted another woman in. Needless to say, this man is dressed like a low-level agent in a black suit. The woman has bright blonde hair, a sweet face, and a good figure. She is obviously a rare beauty. And she was still explaining at this moment, I have good intentions. You can't do this. Jane Foster. When Agent Simons saw her figure, he asked in surprise, why are you, a physicist who pursues the operation of celestial bodies, arrested? The following male agent's speech solved her doubts. It's Thor. She said we imprisoned that man specially and insisted on breaking in to take a look. Thor is just a mentally disturbed poor man, you shouldn't lock him up. Jane looked at the agents beside her and tried to explain, we should let him out and let him receive the treatment he deserves. If he is kept in jail any longer, he must have gone insane. Are you sure? The expression on Simmons' face became a little playful. You must know that in order to obtain Thor's willing cooperation, she summoned beauties from all over the world to have a party. The messiness in this shocked the Asgard warrior. So it goes without saying. Naturally, he forgot about Jane who had just arrived on Earth and had a hookup. What's wrong? Don't you dare to answer. Thor must have been imprisoned. Jane didn't seem to understand yet, and was still shouting. Really? Then I'll show you the good things Thor has done. Agent Simmons moved to the display screen, and then turned on the surveillance camera hidden in Thor's room. Zitza, following a slight electromagnetic sound. What comes into view is the noisy scene of the wine pool and meat forest. And Thor, who is the centerpiece of the stage, is still dancing happily. How uncomfortable is he? Are you sure we imprisoned him? Are you sure he's not enjoying it? Or is the relationship between you enough to make him give up this kind of life? This rhetorical question completely broke the blonde woman's guard. You must know that Jane originally had a good impression of Thor. Otherwise, he wouldn't be his official partner in the anime. But what about now? Within this special integrate universe, Thor has been drugged by alcohol and women. He was just a warrior living in a backward theocratic world. How did he know that cunning humans would play so fancy? This place is much more interesting than God's domain. Whenever Thor was having a great time, he would yell something like this, which was enough to make his father's blood pressure soar. It can be called the American comic version of Happy to Miss Shoe. No, no, no. Jane braved the heavy rain and ran into the wild. You must know that she also struggled for a while before running over to search for Thor. Unexpectedly, she actually lost so completely. She felt as if she was wearing a Joker's mask. And it was just after Jane ran out. It originally stayed in the center of the laboratory. A shallow pattern appeared on the properly placed Thor's hammer, and then quickly disappeared. Agent Simmons watched the girl go away, seemingly unaware of all this, but then silently said sorry in his heart. Dr. Jane, for the sake of human peace, please leave. She doesn't know yet. This Jane will probably be the biggest winner. Luke was the biggest winner tonight. Originally, he had been surrounded by members of the Viper gang. If Leo hadn't come forward to rescue him, he might have capsized in the gutter. But after his partner came forward, all of this was reversed. 2-2 at 2B+. Flame burst, mixed with people's screams. This interweaving condenses into a beautiful picture. This is a scene decorated with blood and life. Grace. So elegant. Zila. After a crisp sound of the knife, Naal wiped the blood on his face. His face was filled with silence. He walked forward and looked at the head of the family, Cornell Stock, who was half kneeling on the ground. But punched him so hard that his facial expression lost control. Tell me about it. Do you have any nice last words before you die? I'll wait for you in hell. Although the big boss Stokes felt regretful, why did he provoke such a ruthless person? But he still replied stiffly. It's not okay to do otherwise. When Stokes watched all the younger brothers fall down, he knew in his heart that he might be in trouble tonight. Even though he came out to fool around, he was prepared to be killed. But I am still unwilling. Ah! Stokes roared at the man in front of him. After all, it is impotent rage. The next second, Leo has sheathed his sword. The gangster who was still shouting had slowly fallen down while holding his neck. Luke, who witnessed everything happening, slowly stood up from the garbage pile. He covered his bleeding abdomen and sighed. If you hadn't come tonight, I'm afraid his 200 kilograms of meat would have been handed over here. Quote. Leo walked forward with a smile. He patted the man in front of him and said, "Don't be nervous. My friends and enemies have been eliminated." And after he glanced around and saw the man's injured abdomen, he said nervously, "I'm afraid this is not easy to treat, right?" Luke said with pain on his face, "That's true. My skin is so hard. I don't know if there is any doctor who can help repair it." But just after he said this, Leo's eyes gleamed. He patted his chest and said with joy, "I have a way. My boss is a great doctor. He has a way to save you." Luke. Inside Hell's Kitchen. As rounds of mafia firefights are completed. Dawn is coming. The dazzling red sun broke through the clouds and once again shined on the nuclear-free New York City. But in the public hospital on the island of Manhattan, a woman with light blue hair was waking up from a deep sleep. She was rubbing her aching head, her eyes were full of confusion, and she was leaning against the wall with her hands on the edge of the bed. On the way, he muttered, "Didn't I get hit by a car? My father took us to the park to play, but he was hit by a vehicle carrying dangerous goods. The hot black oil soaked through the entire car. My sister and I are obviously suffocated. How can we be okay?" Just when Jessica Jones was scratching her head, Nurse Claire, who had just pushed the door open, screamed first, "Dr. Sean, come here and take a look. The patient in bed 3 is awake. She's actually awake." Jones tilted her head and glanced at the woman in front of her. She didn't know why she was so excited. And the female nurse Claire couldn't wait to walk up to her and said, "You are so lucky. You have been in a vegetative state for a month and you actually recovered." "Have I been asleep for that long?" Jones gritted her teeth, not expecting all this, and then she seemed to come to her senses and asked, "What about my family?" Claire hesitated after hearing this, and then said, "I'm sorry to tell you, madam, your family was killed in that car accident." Am I alone?" Jones leaned against the wall, and her hands slowly tightened as she held the iron railings along the bed. The hard fence was actually bent. Nurse Claire was shocked when she saw this. It's not like she hasn't seen superheroes who fight criminals. But the woman in front of me has been lying down for a month and is extremely weak. Isn't it a bit exaggerated to be able to break an iron fence just by doing this? And under her worried gaze, Jones quickly adjusted his mentality and saw her loosening her hands, looking at her arms in surprise, and then apologized repeatedly. "Sorry, I messed up again." Tap tap tap. There was also a rush of footsteps outside the door. The thin male doctor ran in. He ran into a trash can in a panic, but he quickly stood in front of Jones and said, "It's unbelievable. We all think you won't survive." Unexpectedly, Sean stammered, as if he wanted to explain to the woman in front of him that her ability to wake up was a miracle, in the medical sense. Nurse Claire spread her hands when she saw this. Obviously she also knew the character of the guy in front of her. As the person involved, Jones was a little stunned. At this moment, she doesn't know that she has the potential to become a superhero. She is still an 18-year-old girl who is worried about the future. Also inside Hell's Kitchen, in those spacious apartments, as the curtains on the side close to the sun were slowly opened, warm eyes shone on the man and woman beside the bed. The woman was wearing thin pajamas, her eyes were dull, as if she had lost her soul. The man next to her was full of energy, and there was a lavender luster shining deep in his eyes. When the man stretched out his hand to touch her, her body was still trembling slightly. But then, the man said, "When I leave, you will forget all this. You will only remember that a person returned to the house. As for the wounds on your body, you accidentally fell." Click. After Zebediah Kilgrave snapped his fingers, he put on his clothes and walked out of the house with a happy face. The woman behind him muttered as if possessed by a demon, "I came back to the house alone." As the most shameless fool in Hell's Kitchen, the purple man Zebediah Kilgrave is undoubtedly the benchmark figure among them. He has long since become a violent person because he was constantly tortured by the extreme experiments conducted by his scientist parents Albert and Louise, of aliens, and can control the thinking of others. He likes to find a sense of presence in women who are weaker than him. But every time after a night of tenderness, he will turn against others again. Just this morning, he walked out of the house as usual, but the woman in the bedroom was repeating the words over and over again, and there were still a lot of bruises on her shoulders. At the same time, after Leo brought Luke back to Lisan's residence, he got his wish and met the doctor. "Are you sure the person who cured me was the famous butcher?" Luke stood there dumbfounded, staring at the man in front of him, almost speechless. But Leo said, "Relax my friend, Master Lisan's rescue skills are much more proficient than his killing skills." Also under his explanation, Lisan stood tall, with a light golden luster shining on his body, just like the resurrection of an ancient golden tree, releasing a free, peaceful and warm luster. Even if he didn't take action. But just seeing this scene, does it also make people fall into a pilgrimage mentality that is difficult to extricate themselves from? He is like a god walking in the world. It was also when Lisan reached out and pointed lightly, he saw the warm light falling on Luke's body. And the next second, jingle, clang, clang, the crisp sound of shrapnel falling to the ground came. When Luke looked down, he found that the wound on his lower abdomen had healed. "No, it's not just that. I still feel." Luke still feels full of strength. This was a different effect than any surgery he had ever experienced. "It's like becoming stronger from the inside out. I seem to feel that my strength has also increased." Luke stood up, and when he looked up at Lisan, he obviously wanted to get some answer. But the latter shook his head. "You feel wrong, right? I just restored your body and brought it to a healthy level. If you want to increase your strength, isn't this enough?" While Lisan was talking and laughing, I only saw the cyan luster flowing on his body. And as he gently clicked towards the garden outside the window, the next second, emerald light shines. Crash. Countless vines rose out of thin air, as if some incredible monster emerged from the ground. And as the vines gathered together, they condensed into a terrifying monster. Luke bets that he has never seen that slender snake-like creature with horns on its head. Leo beside him opened his mouth to explain. "This is the dragon, the legendary dragon from the east." And as the wooden dragon made of vines hovered, it stuck out its head and prostrated in front of Lisan, like an extremely loyal pet. Can just a random finger have such a powerful effect? There was a look of excitement in Luke's eyes. But for him who had just experienced the incident of his skin being penetrated, this power is simply more attractive than a beautiful woman in front of him. Luke was eager to increase his strength. Without waiting for Leo beside him to say anything, he asked, "Can I learn from you how to become stronger? Can I join you?" Cough, cough, cough. Tony in the ward coughed violently, but he did not stop listing the required materials and lists. After he learned about a series of big moves by Henkmer Advanced Industries, I knew I had no way out. Even if he has 2 mechanical wastes, he is still confident of defeating the enemy. But if a worker wants to do his job well, he must first sharpen his tools. Tony just stayed in the ward, leaning on the edge of the bed. He looked at Little Pepper in front of him and said with a tough face, "I want to build 2 portable mechanical kidneys." OMG. Little Pepper was speechless after hearing this. She knew how proud the man in front of her was. If the transplantation technology was adjusted slowly, a lot of time would be wasted. And sufficient time is exactly what Tony lacks. It's also that he usually makes too many enemies. If it weren't for this, there would still be room for negotiation. What if Tony knew that Dr. Lizard, whom he had defeated, had successfully developed a potion to heal the human body? You might go crazy, but the current billionaire is still immersed in the belief that he will win. He chose flesh and blood, weak flesh, and mechanical ascension. Come, let Tony Stark create a miracle. Ha 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 ha. But when Little Pepper standing aside saw this scene, she felt extremely familiar. Over the past few months, it's like her boss Tony Stark took the wrong medicine. Not only did he close his weapons research and development department, but he also put on his battle armor and became a hero of the people. She just cried to death. Is this still Tony, the capital boy? Just today, she saw Tony, known as the conscience of capital, reappear. And in the ruins beside this coast, after Tony was treated and left. In that almost rubble pile. But there was a strange sound coming out. Crunch, crunch, crunch. As the camera zooms in, you can see in that cold cave, there was this black sticky substance eating away at the damaged armor. After Peter Parker came to this place and made a big fuss, Tony's arsenal was also beaten to pieces. The semi-mechanical semi-symbiote that was originally trapped inside also ran out. It cleverly hid under the ground and waited for the spider demon to go away before it climbed out. Don't you know this? I was shocked when I saw it. The prototypes of the armor originally made by Tony were scattered in the ruins. Oh my god, is this all food? The semi-mechanical symbiote was so excited that it swallowed up several of Tony's armors in a short period of time. And after it gradually adapted to the machinery and relied on the machinery to enhance its own strength. This semi-mechanical symbiote also began to undergo a transformation. As it gradually stood up, its body was covered with sharp metal spikes, and on its arms, palms, and ankles, there were energy supply light balls similar to small nuclear reactors. As for his back, there were even more exaggerated, almost all of Stark Industries' small weapons arsenal were installed. God, is this some kind of super criminal who lacks firepower? This is clearly a humanoid self-propelled arsenal. The arrogant Tony said that he wanted to make armor to protect mankind. But he created the most terrifying humanoid weapon. Tony, I will give you the most gentle reward. The cyborg body said this. And while he was talking, the wriggling black tentacles were entangled together and condensed into the shape of 3 heads and 6 arms. This is the inspiration it got from the spider demon. And as an individual, does it have one more advantage than Venom integrated with Peter? That is, it can gain experience from every battle and continue to strengthen. Clang, clang. Also in the Weapons Research and Development Department of Henkmer Advanced Industries. Although it is already late at night. But at this moment, there are still R&D personnel working on it. As a top scientist, Ivan was naturally not absent. As he leaned on the table and chair and looked at the behemoth in front of him. His eyes were full of enthusiasm and expectation. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.